Trigger on! We're in our try-on bodies, and we're all gathered together in our team of 4, the Osamu Mikumo fan club, Team 1 of the Osamu Mikumo branch. We've got our director, Annaliese, here.
Yeah! Osamu forever!
Woo! We've got our... What position are you, Wensleydale?
I think I would be a trapper/shooter.
Okay, we got our shooter, Wensleydale Cheddar, here. Colton, what position are you?
That's a good. I was gonna say sniper too, because I feel like I'd beat the sniping type. I mean, Sniper King 323. It's in my username. I kind of have to be.
That is perfect. That is perfect. So both you and Wensleydale are snipers.
I think I'm betraying Uza by not being a sniper, so I'm going to be one now.
Hey, maybe I should be a sniper too, and we can all be Azuma Squad. Or not Azuma Squad. What is the other squad? Arashiyama Squad? That was him.
Arafune?
Yeah, Arafune Squad. Arafune. Yeah. We can all be Arafune Squad. We can, but who gets to wear Arafune's hat?
I think I would have...
Annaliese does because she's the captain.
Yes!
I would have Taichi's Ushanka.
Okay, but we can all be trained by Azuma. That could be our thing, too. So we're a squad like Arafune Squad, but we're all trained by the #1 sniper, Azuma. There we go. So, we are all gathered together here, and we are ready and excited to talk about World Trigger by Daisuke Ashihara. We're celebrating its 5th anniversary since starting being serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump. As part of our ongoing celebration of Shonen Jump's 50th anniversary, lots of things to be excited about. World Trigger is one of my favorite series that was running in Weekly Shonen Jump. Sadly, it's been on hiatus for a 1.5 years, but we are still super excited to talk about it and give it some love. And yeah, I'm super glad to be joined by all these wonderful people here today to talk about it. Including, of course, Annaliese, who is, as we all know, the letterer for World Trigger in Weekly Shonen Jump and for Viz Media, as well as the founder of the unofficial Osamu fan club and #1 Osamu Mikumo fan in the world.
Yay, Osamu!
Member number 69!
Yep, and number 55 represented right here. And speaking of Wensleydale, number 69, Osamu Mikumo fan here. Wensleydale is the host of Stammer's Stream, our rival Shonen Jump review podcast, as well as the voice of Osamu Mikumo in Team ODA's World Trigger abridged series, World Triggered. So he truly encapsulates the Osamu experience because he has been him. He has been inside him. Ah, that came out right. This isn't one of Chris's erotic fanfics.
I am proud to have been his vocal cords. Hello, my name is Osamu, and my dream is to become a harem protagonist.
I believe in your dream, Osamu. I believe in you.
Ah.
How far will he go? We just gotta keep watching the abridged series to find out.
Oh, yeah. Yes, all those episodes that we released.
Hey, you're working on episode 3, you told me.
Yeah. We are in the editing phase, so we should be ready to release in a month or so, maybe.
Awesome! I'm looking forward to it.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers. I'm eager to talk about World Trigger, and of course I'm eager to wait for Ashihara-sensei to get better, so that the story may continue, because he left it on such a cliffhanger, and I really want to see the next match.
Yes.
Oh yeah. But I'm so glad we're surrounded by some real World Trigger enthusiasts here today, because this is kind of going to be a repeat of that Black Clover discussion we did last year, because we've got Colton here as our token meh guy on the series.
Yep, I unlike with Black Clover, I'm not totally, I'm not gearing to like totally shit on it like I was at first. I'm mostly indifferent to World Trigger. I like it well enough, but I am definitely not as passionate as the three of you, and I'm kind of jealous of that.
Join us!
Join the Osamu Mikumo fan club. We have cookies and nice cards.
Stockholm Syndrome strikes again.
I'm sure within the next couple of months I'll have an epiphany and realize that World Trigger is the best thing I've ever read, and I'll become Osamu fan club member number, I don't know, 152 or something. I don't know.
Man, if we get up to that number, that'd be awesome.
How many people are a part of that fan club? I'm curious.
99.
Oh wow! Okay.
Nice.
Huh.
So someone
99
out there listening to this, be the 100 member.
You could be 199. Just sent me a message saying that she got her card Wednesday, I think it was. So
Nice.
join today.
Honestly, that's
nice.
That's kind of enticing. I almost want to be member 100 just to be 100.
Do it, Colton. Be one of us.
I do love the card you sent me, Annaliese, though. I recall getting a card that I don't have it right now, but it had a drawing of Osamu saying, "I need an adult," and Zapdos right there in the corner saying, "Yas."
Did you ask me to wait to send your card until you could be 69?
Absolutely. I had to wait. I had to wait, even if I wouldn't be considered in Chris's contest. So, still, it was worth it. Thank you for that.
I'm glad you liked it.
That's awesome. But yeah, I guess we should dig into World Trigger itself here and begin our series discussion. But before we do that, we should go over just how we got into World Trigger, like when we started reading it and our first initial impressions of it. And I want to begin with Annaliese, because she started reading it before all of us by virtue of working on the series from chapter 1. Annaliese, would you like to go into your initial thoughts on World Trigger?
So I lucked out, I think, because I was assigned the series. I had just finished work on another one of my children, Takamagahara.
Mm-hmm. Which we talked on the show a few weeks ago. Colton and Maxie did.
I love that series for all its flaws. I love it. But another editor, so I finished that series, and then an editor, Hope Donovan, was like, "Hey, I know you don't have any Jump series right now. We're going to start this new one. It's sci-fi. Do you want it?" And I was like, I don't really like sci-fi, but I need some work, so I'll take it. And we thought at first, and I don't know why we thought this, but we thought its name was Trigger World. And so I can still go on the Viz servers, and there's still a folder for Trigger World. And there's nothing in it. And soon after, we're like, oh, it's World Trigger. That doesn't make any sense, but okay, we'll go for it. And I remember seeing the manuscript for it and being like, so it's like aliens? Oh, okay, cool. That seems cool, I guess. Whatever. And I liked the first chapter okay. I thought it was interesting, but like I said before, I'm not a huge sci-fi person. But it's just one of those series that just grows on you. And within the first volume, I was just like, this boy Osamu, I shall protect him. And it took a little while before it kind of got blown out of proportion. It wasn't until his battle with Kazuma in, I think, volume 5.
Oh, that was such a good battle.
I sent a picture of the screen cap where Osamu says something like, one more battle. Because Kazuma's like, I don't know why Jin gave up Fujin for you. And Osamu's like, one more battle. And I was just like, oh, this boy is the best boy. Oh, I love him so much. I need to protect him. And I ended up printing out that screenshot. I have it about 3 feet by 2 feet. It's like 8 pieces of printer paper all taped together. And I put it on my staircase so I could see him every time I went upstairs.
Oh, wow. Is it still up?
So it's still up in a different location because I've moved since then, but I still have it. But I took a picture of it and I sent that to my editor and I'm like, I guess I'm the president of the creepy Osamu fan club now. And she sent back a sketch of the squad emblem. And it was pretty much the Osamu fan club squad emblem. And we had to make club cards. So yeah, that's my, as my dad would say, that's my 5-minute story for a 1-minute explanation of how I'm into the series.
Nice. We got the origins of the unofficial Osamu fan club. The long secret, unexplored, untold origins. Very awesome.
It's because I'm a creeper.
No. Our love of Osamu is pure.
Yes.
We love and will protect this poor boy. Sweet, sweet boy. Well, anyway, I guess I will go next as number 55, which puts me seniority over Wensleydale.
Okay, so we're going by order of membership.
Perhaps. Yeah, let's do it that way. And Colton will be last because he does not have a number yet. Like Wensleydale, my story with World Trigger begins with weekly manga recap and learning about the series and getting into it through them. Now, of course, weekly manga recap, when they started reviewing the series, was not particularly kind to it. It took a few months for it to warm up to it.
It's just so boring. How many duck faces are there in this chapter? 16 duck faces. Okay, there. Recap done.
There was that 1 week where Chris was reviewing it by himself, and he spent a lot of time complaining about why it was number 3 in the rankings last week, and Wobble Rogers being cancelled. But yeah, I fell off of Weekly Manga Recap before they got to that turnaround point where World Trigger really started really enjoying it, and I came back in later to the year, and I was like surprised, and they were like praising it so much, and I was like, whoa. It seems like it got really good because they're loving the series now. And so it took a little while after that for me to get into it, but when the anime was starting up, I finally decided, yeah, I'm going to check out the series now and see how things are going with it. And I decided after watching the first episode of the anime that I should just read the manga, stick with the manga, which I did. So I've only ever seen the first episode of the anime. Outside of clips and stuff, but yeah, and so I caught up to it, as much as I could with what was out, and then when they did a free promotion for Shonen Jump in, the beginning of 2015, where they had like 4 issues free for a month, I checked those out and realized, oh man, Shonen Jump's such an amazing service. I need to subscribe right now. And I did, and I read new World Trigger chapters every week onward from that point, and it was one of my favorite series to read every week. And I enjoyed being a part of the fandom that was of World Trigger, that was kind of built around Weekly Manga Recap, and like people from there who are really passionate about World Trigger, and like that's how I learned about the Osamu, unofficial Osamu fan club, and entered into that. And I actually won that contest that you and Weekly Manga Recap did like in the summer 2015, where Chris was giving away signed copies of his Barrage volumes to lucky winner. And so I received those, and it was really cool to have those. So I have that very happy connection as well. So yeah, I love World Trigger, and I miss it very dearly, but yeah, it's a great community to be a part of. It's like really fun and welcoming and super nice. And Wensleydale, since you are a fan creator in that community, creating the World Trigger Abridged series, I think that's a good transition to telling your story, your World Trigger origin story.
All right. So, I got into World Trigger, surprise, surprise, through Weekly Manga Recap, as it got added as a regular series there.
Bless you, Weekly Manga Recap. Thank you for doing this.
So, yeah, initially I liked it, but not as much as I do now. As I've told you before, World Trigger has a lot of reread value. So, as I read the series all over again much later in preparation for the writing of our abridged series, I became more and more invested in the detailed web of relationships and border and the subtle character arcs going on in the background. The one thing I knew from the start was that Ashihara's storytelling is exactly my cup of tea. So it's very character-driven. He's not afraid to introduce a cast of thousands and then masterfully keep track of everything. And it's clear that he's planned a lot from the get-go, which I always try to emulate in my writing. Then there's Ashihara's humor, which is very deadpan and subdued. It's more like Peanuts than the exaggerated, bombastic One Piece type of humor. I've eventually come to love both types, though. If you thought eggplant curry is the funniest thing ever in World Trigger, check out the border mini profiles because there are some serious hidden gems in there.
Yeah, I love Ashihara's sense of humor so much, and all his, descriptions in the character profiles are super funny.
You mentioned last time Arashiyama being a siscon and a brocon at the same time.
Yeah. And that his, character description is, I like this character a lot, but drawing his hair is a pain in big, bold text. Oh, there's so many great ones. Oh, we're definitely going to talk about, Ashihara's sense of humor as we continue on the discussion, because it is a real treat. But let us talk about Colton and how you got into World Trigger.
So, yeah, I just want to backtrack and say I'm not so much met on the series as I am just kind of I feel like out of the four of us, I'm probably the most casual fan of World Trigger, where it's I like it just fine, but I'm certainly not as knowledgeable about it or as passionate about it as everyone else on the call. But when I first got into World Trigger, I think it was pretty early on too. I want to say as far as chapter 7 or something. It was really early on that I got into it. Because I think I saw it around, and I would peek at it every once in a while, and I'd be like, oh, this looks kind of neat. But then I decide to what was it? I saw it around, and I read a bit of it at first, but I wasn't really too keen on the beginning of it. I didn't think it was super interesting. It wasn't until about a year or two later that I actually seriously started reading it and catching up with it. Because I guess just a little fun fact, it's kind of because of World Trigger that I ended up becoming a member of the now defunct Anime 3000 network, back when I used to record the Manga Corner, because my host at the time, JD, was looking for people to talk about World Trigger, and bless her heart, I love her, but she didn't exactly do the most thorough search for people to talk about World Trigger. I think she searched for World Trigger tweets, and I just happened to be tweeting about both World Trigger and Gintama at the time. And she was looking for people who liked both, and I guess she was like, hey, you should come on and talk about both of these things with me. And I'm like, okay, I could definitely talk about one of those things. So I eventually did that episode, and because of that episode, I ended up reading up to I think it was the very middle of the large scale invasion arc, or whatever you want to call it. And it was really only around that arc that I really started to get into World Trigger, and I was really interested in seeing where the series could go from there. I think it's safe to say that's probably my favorite arc in World Trigger so far. And I think originally I dropped it because I don't know. I think part of the reason I don't like World Trigger as much is because I think I prefer reading it in chunks than I do weekly.
I hear
That's
that.
fair.
Yeah, because World Trigger is just one of those things to me where it's you only get so much of the story per week, and I feel like I benefit from it personally from reading it a few chapters at a time, than, just because, again, I feel like you only get so much of it week to week, the story that is. So I dropped it at first, and it's only just recently that I like read all of it for the podcast today, and I think I like it a bit more than I used to. But, it's still one of those things where it's like, I like it, but I don't necessarily love it.
That's understandable. I think it just has to do with, like, different preferences and storytelling and stuff. So... But
I think it's also because I didn't buy any of the volumes just because I've been subscribed to visit Shonen Jump since like 2013, so I had pretty much almost all of World Trigger's run, so I pretty much read through it all that way, and I'm only just now realizing, there are some cool extras in the volumes and stuff, and I feel like I kind of missed out on some of those because some of those sound really funny.
Oh yeah, you should definitely check out the volumes if you've never checked them out before, because all those bonus pages, and also all the character profiles that Ashihara does, both the ones at the end where he kind of like has more jokey descriptions of the characters, and also the ones during like the middle of the volumes where he actually kind of goes into like how he thought of designing this character and like what he thought about how the character's role in the story kind of turned out. All of those are like really fun to read and also very interesting. Like, there was the guy that confronted Hyusei in the Galapula arc. Like, I remember Reggie. Like, I remember his comment, like, saying, this guy ended up being the MVP of the arc because he did something that I couldn't do with the other characters in terms of advancing the story with Hyusei. And, like, he also was this very emotional character that, was very refreshing for World Trigger. So, yeah, I thought that was a very interesting, observation that he was, like, thinking of. Also, like, during the After Krator arc, like, when he mentioned, like, details about, like, some of the After Krator characters that were, like, not said in the story, like, stuff like that Mira is probably gonna have a political marriage to either Hyrene or Ranbanine, and that he designed her based off the devil and stuff. Like, there's a lot of really cool, insights into his thought processes in designing characters and, like, how he used characters in the story that I really appreciate, like, to see how he constructed the story and stuff. And also, of course, a sense of humor about his characters is also a lot of fun, too. Like how he considers Mr. Kinuda to be one of the three mascots and moe characters of World Trigger. Which is a great comment.
I didn't realize at first he was a freaking tanuki.
Yeah. There's a kitsune and tanuki, Netsuki and Kimita.
Oh, that makes sense. Oh, it fits Netsuki so well.
Oh, that's great. But yeah, we've all got very interesting, unique entries into World Trigger. And now that we've gotten our initial impressions out of the way, why don't we dig into our thoughts on the series as it progressed, and we'll kind of go by an arc basis. Let's start with maybe those first chunk of the story, which first 20, 30 chapters, which I don't know what the official designation for this arc is called, but like everything before Atomic Toma 2 is like officially a team, I would say. I'd say it's an arc.
I think the wiki has it as the introduction arc, although it kind of splits when the Miwa fights start.
Yeah, because at that point they have the team set, and then in my mind, I kind of thought of everything up to the invasion kind of as like one chunk of the story, if we want to think of it that way. Because we're kind of getting introduced to all the characters, and Tamako 2 is just forming, and then the invasion happens, and then that's like the next half of the series up till that point, because we have like 40 straight chapters of this arc where we're getting to know Osamu, Yuma, Jin, and Chika, and then we're getting to know Border, and then we're getting all this conflict over Border of whether they're going to allow Yuma to be a member. we have the formation of the team of Yuma, Osamu, and Chika. And then we've got some early training as they're making their way up to B rank. And then the invasion starts. And then the next 43 chapters are the invasion, which is it's just as long as all the stuff that came before it.
Very true. Although the Black Trigger capture arc, when Jin has a fight against, everyone, is a pretty clear split from the arc surrounding it. So yeah. I love that arc, by the way. Also the introduction of naive girl, scruffy hottie, and composed beefcake.
Yes, they have the best nicknames, Tamakomo-one. I mean, I forget Karasuma's name a lot. At least during the original one, I forgot his name a lot. But because Weekly Manga Recap always referred to it as Scruffy Yachty, I remember that.
It's so appropriate.
Yeah.
and he just the fact that he just goes with it so stoically is the best. Hello, I'm Scruddy Hottie. Nice to meet you.
People also call Reiji Beefcake a lot too, so you can easily identify that nickname. I think Konami's nickname is probably the one that gets used the least. I mean, yeah, because it's more like a character quirk, I guess.
It's the weakest, really.
Mm-hmm. In spite of that, she's one of the most popular characters, though. So.
Yeah, Konami manages to stand out on her own in comparison to her teammates. I guess so. She doesn't really need a nickname.
But to start at the beginning, when we're first getting used to Yuma and Osamu, those first maybe 10, 20 chapters, because I know Colton said that he wasn't, super into that early part. What are our opinions on that, on how it developed? Because that's also the part where Weekly Manga Recap was, super harsh on the series. And so I remember that. And I keep thinking about that when I was, rereading the early parts of World Trigger, and I was I don't really see what is off about this. What would draw such disinterest, necessarily. Because I feel like the storytelling is very well done. In terms of pacing. We get to know Osamu and Yuma and what their deal is pretty quickly, and I think things escalate pretty fast because by the end of the first volume, we're meeting one of the top A-rank squads, and we're meeting one of the stronger characters in the series in the form of Katora. And from there on, we just continue getting introduced to more important characters, because after that we get introduced to Jin, and then shortly after that we get introduced, to the border higher-ups, all the people at HQ in that inner circle, and then we get Chika, so, I feel like things build at a pretty steady pace, in terms of, getting us deeper into the world, and what we need to learn about, the series. And so, I guess on a week-to-week basis, I suppose I could see, when you don't know where this is going, that you're not sure, what to latch onto. But when I was rereading it, I was just noticing, man, Ashihara really developed this well. He seemed to have, all his ideas very well thought out, and he developed them at a good pace. Though I do know that he did change his plans a little bit because he introduced Jin much earlier than he intended to. I believe there was an interview, I think it was with Hope, that was done a long time ago, a few years ago.
That one was with Alexi, yeah.
Alexi, yeah. And I mentioned that Ashihara's editor did mention that. So he did change his plans after the response to the early chapters, but I honestly think he was doing a really good job with them, and when he made the transition and had to change plans to introduce Jin earlier, it didn't feel off. It didn't feel let's change course and introduce, this character all of a sudden. It feels this seems like an appropriate time to do this. So what do you guys think about these early chapters? Do you agree that they're one of the weaker elements of the series, or do you think that upon reflection, they're actually very well done?
It's very true that Ashihara structures his arcs very well. Although at the very beginning, he has a lot of information about his world, and he dumps a lot of that pretty. A lot of it pretty quickly. So I was left a bit confused at the start with the Tryon soldiers being called neighbors, and yet in the case of Yuma, we have a neighbor taking humanoid form, but then they keep talking about Tryon soldiers as if they are neighbors. So I get the reasoning in universe that the public doesn't know the neighbors are living beings, but yeah, it's a lot of confusing terminology for the reader at the start. So I get really why it might throw some people off.
Yeah, there's a lot of information, like there's a lot of world setup, and so you kind of like, I think he does it really well, but you still have to set up all these things. Like, yeah, what are the neighbors and what are the Tryon soldiers versus Yuma versus, what's border and what's happening in the world. And now there are different types of triggers, like the whole Jin versus the world sort of arc. I think it's brilliant, but it's really just explaining different positions and different weapons and stuff. And so I could see how people could be like, I'm not into this, but I think for what it is, it's done really well.
Yeah, it's really a personal thing whether it manages to hold your attention for these 20 chapters, since, introducing so many things at the same time may seem a little clumsy, though this arc definitely isn't without merit.
Mm-hmm. Would you guys say that the exposition in the early chapters detracted from characterization or character development? Do you think that they detracted from something like really emotionally gripping to latch onto? Colton and I were discussing yesterday off mic about why we thought My Hero Academia's first chapter is one of the best first chapters in any Shonen Jump series, and we feel, at least I feel, that it's because there's such a strong emotional core to it and such a powerful cathartic climax to that first chapter, where it's like you feel like it's almost a self-contained story in a way, as a one-shot, even, because you have like a full emotional arc for Deku in that first chapter. And it feels like it comes to a really powerful point when All Might tells him, you too can be a hero, and he breaks down and cries, because that's all he's ever wanted to hear, and he proved it, and someone's acknowledging him, his hero's acknowledging him. And like, for the first chapter of World Trigger doesn't really have a strong arc like that. We do get to know that Osamu is a border agent. We get a sense of what he might fight for, and we get a sense of what Yuma might fight for. But it doesn't feel like there's like some really strong connection between them in the first chapter as of yet.
It more just like teases bits of the story, whereas you're right, like My Hero Academia is more like, it could be a self-contained story. Like, it's such a strong first chapter. And not to say that World Triggers isn't, it's just not as an emotionally powerful introduction, I think.
Yes, and I think that makes a difference as a first impression. When I'm rereading the series and I know where things are going, the first chapter of World Trigger feels very appropriate for what it's doing, because I know where the next chapter will lead and where it goes after that. But when it was first coming out, I can see why this first chapter didn't click with a lot of people, because it feels like, you're getting a lot of information about this world, but not enough information about these characters.
So something I see about the beginning of World Trigger is something I used to see people bring up a lot as a point of contention is, why do these three bullies keep coming back or whatever? Because you have to have the like typical bully characters to basically create some kind of conflict, which for the first chapter I think is fine, but for some reason they come back like right afterwards in the next chapter, and I think they come back even a third time, and granted for not as long, but
hey, that was so cool.
I don't think that, I mean, personally for me, that's not like the worst part about, the beginnings of World Trigger, but I do remember that being like a small point of contention with people when they were first getting into World Triggers. Why do these people, like, they spend, like, the Ashihara spends way too much time on these three, like they should be gone already. And, I find it kind of interesting that they came back as much as they did, but I don't know, that's just a weird little thing I used to see people complain about a lot.
I completely understand that they blend together, but in the second chapter, he actually meets different bullies in the streets. In his Fish Out of Water chapter at the start, that becomes his defining character moment. Beating up some bullies and people who mug him, then breaking their bones. Then after Osamu tells him that, no, Yuma, you can't do that. Then he just beats them up without breaking the bones.
It's character development.
Yeah. I think people get frustrated with I don't think these bullies actually show up a whole lot because, like Cheddar says, it's like, I think the bullies in the second chapter were different characters, and then the bullies from the first chapter, they show up for like a cameo, and after like Osamu is revealed to be a border agent, and they're like shrinking away from class because they don't want a confrontation. But I don't remember them doing anything outside after that, or appearing again after that. I think people get frustrated with bully-like characters in like these early chapters, just because they feel like such a cliche, because, bullies are bullies.
Yeah.
There's not much more to them. They're just there to serve a purpose to show that, Yuma is powerful, and he takes no crap from anyone. And,
we need to give somebody for Yuma to beat up.
Yeah, and also just in the scale of like, we have these alien monsters that are attacking cities, and so why not just focus on those? Why have these like way smaller scale, small fry bullies to deal with when we can just focus on these monsters and fighting those? I think that's another thing that people might have felt, this is why waste time on this when we could just go straight to the monster.
You know what's funnier? When they actually get to Border, he invents a completely new trio of bullies that are constantly in the C rank.
Yeah.
So I do really think that Ashihara just loves this character archetype and just wants to use it all the time.
See, those three I was okay with because they all got like beaten in one panel each. So I was pretty okay with that. Plus that ended up being a lot more comedic, so,
Yeah, they felt more like joke characters from the start, because we knew that Yuma was gonna clown them, and he did in one panel. So, like, it didn't feel prolonged. And it was amazing that, 50 chapters later? No, it's gotta be more than that. They return again, and then, when Husei's trying to become a B rank, and Husei clowns them.
Yes!
It's just amazing.
That was pretty good, actually. Yeah, that's I tweeted about it. That's probably actually my favorite chapter of Full Trigger. It's just Husei beating everybody up.
It's pretty great.
So also something that happened in the introduction arc was the Miwa fight when Chika was introduced.
Yes, I think that's a point that in that interview with Ashihara's editor, they noted that was like a very interesting turning point in the series in terms of characters, or at least because they mention that they point out and they highlight Yuma's line about that was a very interesting lie when Miwa tells him that only he and Yonia are confronting them, when he has the snipers on his team off in a distance also gunning at them, and that added so much depth to his catchphrase at that point. That's a stupid lie catchphrase, because then we kind of get some more depth to Yuma, that he's intrigued by these guys and he's more playful attitude towards them. So it takes what could have been like an arrogant catchphrase, kind of like Ryoma Echizen's, you still have a long ways to go, and puts a twist on it that makes it more interesting in a way.
I do also like the relationship between Miwa and Yuma. Miwa is a really well-explored portrayal of a revenge-driven racist. At no point is his behavior justified, but it's understandable why he is the way he is. And later on, we even have when Yuma learns about. So it turns out that Miwa's sister during the first neighbor invasion was killed by a neighbor. So then Yuma offers to to have Replica assist with the search for the killer. And he turns him down anyway because he just won't accept help from a neighbor. Something I'm missing though from World Triggered in its theme of race and xenophobia is a kind of a Hody Jones type villain, someone who hates those who are different just cause.
I don't know if we have someone that purely expresses that viewpoint in World Trigger yet, though I feel like there's got to be someone out there. I thought at first, like when the series was still running, that Kido would be that. But as the series developed, there seems to be more nuances into like what he's really after and how he really feels about neighbors. And it's definitely tied to Yuma's dad, Yuiga, and like what his relationship to him was. So I'm interested in that. But yeah, we don't have this purely unjustifiable hatred against neighbors character yet. Because Miwa is the closest to that, but he has a reason, and even if his reason to hate and want to kill all neighbors is like, that's not justified, like he does have a reason. And so we don't have a character who doesn't have a reason, who just hates for the sake of hatred. But that would be an interesting character to introduce in the story.
I guess speaking of Kido, so I guess one thing I really liked about early World Trigger is I kind of like the mind games going on between different factions of Border, where basically like you have everybody going after like the Black Trigger and Jin constantly doing his best to try to like keep it out of Kido's hands, and I really liked a lot of that, and it's sort of the lead up to Jin's fight with the rest of Miwa's squad. Which I think is probably the first fight in World Trigger that I like actually really got into, because there are so many great like surprise attacks, and it's like that's one thing I'll give World Trigger credit for, is I like a lot of the action because it's so chaotic, but you can still kind of follow it at the same time.
Yeah, especially it's made clear that so much thought is given into it.
Yeah, the strategizing is my favorite part of World Trigger fights. The thought that all the characters put into the battle and like what they're doing. No one is just blindly throwing attack at someone. They always have a strategy, a reason for doing what they are doing. And I find that really refreshing, because in a lot of other series, you'll have characters like just punching each other just like madly to
really hard.
I'm just gonna run in and use all my strength and like, wait, maybe think about this first.
Oh no, I'm gonna punch him hard. Oh, that's not working. Maybe I should punch him really hard. Okay, that worked.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I love this manga. It encourages you to think, even in escapist fight scenario. Even silly little things like Jin asking Chief Branch Window to give him the order of the Black Trigger's capture instead of Kido. End up being important tactical decisions that matter in the long run. So
yes.
If you approach it with the right mindset, World Trigger manages to excite you with bureaucracy. How many more pieces of media could hope to do the same?
We used to joke, mostly with the first editor, Hope. We used to joke about, like, this series is great, and the characters are great, and the fights are great, but those board meetings are so good.
Yeah.
I get really excited when there's a board meeting chapter because you see all the politics going around. I mean, you guys mentioned earlier the different factions. There's the Kido faction, the Shinoda faction, and then the Tamakoma faction. And they all have their different goals. And they all have their different alliances. And, like, how are they going to play off of each other? And, like, is this board member actually part of this faction? And, it's so good.
And by the time, if you were confused about the many plot elements in the previous arc, by the time of the Black Trigger capture arc, everything starts to become clear around here.
Yeah, I feel that this is where World Trigger really starts hitting its stride in that, like, Black Trigger arc, where Jin teams up with Arashiyama Squad.
Yes.
Yeah, they team up and they fight with Kazuma Squad, Tachikawa Squad, and Miwa Squad. And, like, that fight and all the tactics shown in that, and just also Jin's overall goal in that fight. He beats Tachikawa and Kazuma with the Fujin, his Black Trigger. He establishes that he's super strong, super good with it. And then he goes to Border HQ, and he's like, well, I just showed you what I can do. You could send Almo after me. You could have two S-Ranks battle each other and potentially destroy the city. But how about this? I will give you guys the Fujin in exchange for letting Yuma join Tamakoma too. So, like, he had this, so his goal, like, was never for meeting to just, like, beat them in a fight. It was, like, to prove a point and then have something to bargain with when he went to confront Kido. It was, like, such a good planning that I was, like, really impressed with. That, like, the fights are not the end goal in of themselves. It's what happens after the fights that is what really matters.
Also, like, anytime Fujin is used, it's never not surprising or cool. Like, it's always totally unexpected, which I love.
Speaking of unexpected, this happens in the first volume, but I think it really is the most shocking, to me at least, during that Get the Black Trigger arc, when you realize that Trion bodies aren't real. So, like in the first volume, Osamu's fighting in the school and he loses his arm. And it's like, oh my god, his arm got cut off. And then later he bails out of his Trion body. But I think somebody gets decapitated in the...
Yes, Kikuchihara.
Yes. And I remember seeing that big, like, oh, snap! And it happens over and over through the series. But every time it happens is just so surprising to me, and it takes a moment before I'm like, oh, no, he's fine. He's just out of the battle.
Yeah, that was something I was initially sort of sour on at first. Was it felt like, because everybody, I don't know how to put this in words. Like, I felt like World Trigger for a while was this might be harsh, but a bit toothless. Just because it felt like, oh, well, people are getting their limbs cut off, but it's okay. Their bodies aren't real. They'll just be fine.
They've got that safety net all the time. No, I totally hear that.
It wasn't until the invasion arc where, you see people fighting against actual like neighbors or whatnot, really strong ones too, that, like you see people like trying to bail out, but, like that ability doesn't matter if you don't have the chance to do so.
Yeah, and there's that in the invasion arc. Anadora kills a bunch of operators in Border HQ. A lot of people outside of that died. Many more were injured and captured. A lot of this we didn't see, but, like, there's clear idea that, yeah, there's, like, a lot of, like, cost to these battles. Like, that, there are consequences. And, Osamu bailing out of his trigger body towards the end there and, like, actually getting hurt in his real body. And, like, when you see him, like, just lying in a pool of his own blood at the end of, like, chapter 80, it's like, whoa, oof, this is harsh. Oh my god.
I think, in a way, because it's been set up that, you just bail out, everything's easy, you're safe. I think because, at least for me, because you get so used to that, once you see Osamu lying in a pile of his own blood, it just, no, buddy, what are you doing? It makes it hurt that much more.
Yeah, it's kind of like the big deaths in One Piece. Because of just the sparsity, it means so much more when somebody actually gets hurt.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it sort of reminds me of, without giving too much away, it kind of reminds me of, like, the few deaths we get in, like, Season 5 of Samurai Jack, honestly.
That's a good point, because in previous seasons of Jack, only robot characters really died and could get brutalized, but in Season 5, they let human characters, really painfully die. It's pretty harsh to watch.
Yeah, and it comes as a shock because, up until then you're like, oh, these are just robots, they're not actual, like, human beings with emotions, and then it's like, oh no, a human just died. Wow, this actually means a lot.
Mm-hmm. Hey, X9 had emotions, Colton.
That's true. But no, yeah. So, that's another thing too, is I kind of like how they use that bailing out system to their advantage, like with what Annaliese was mentioning with Osamu bailing out of his Tryon body during the last legs of the invasion arc. That some of the very last couple of chapters of that arc are really suspenseful and are really exciting, and I really love them, actually.
I think that's a good transition into talking about the invasion arc, which, as we mentioned before, was half the series up to that point when it ended, because all the stuff before that was 42 chapters, and then the invasion arc is like chapters 44 to 85. So it was just as long. And in that way, you might consider it equivalent to Naruto's tuning exams or Bleach's Soul Society arc in terms of like this big arc which introduces a ton of new characters and has such high stakes and such like memorable moments. And so, what did we all think of the invasion arc? I know Colton considers it his favorite arc in the series so far.
It's a good arc.
My favorite part of the series is probably before that. It's Kazama versus Osamu during the border enlistment arc, but the future Crossroads is the series at its most exciting, and I was at the edge of my seat every chapter. I like the series following up on characterizations of background A-rank agents we've already introduced, and introducing B ranks like Hisato or Kuruma, that the Mikumo squad would encounter later. And Hisato's emotional arc and Suwa's unit relationship with Kazama in general had a surprising amount of focus, and I really like this, that World Trigger can focus on secondary characters so much and make them seem like, yeah, they aren't just part of the background, they are real people with their own arcs.
Yeah, like the invasion arc, it does so much for the story. Like, clearly, here's this huge threat. It's a threat to everybody, yada yada. But, like, it does such a good job of both furthering the plot and expanding the world and expanding on all these characters. So, yeah, you get all these characters introduced. It never felt to me so some series, they just introduce characters. At some point, somebody had said, when you don't know what to do with a series, just introduce new characters.
I believe that was a line from Kubo regarding how he wrote Bleach.
Oh dear, this explains so much. This explains so bloody much.
But like,
and, I think that Kubo might have punched himself. Hey, why didn't I think about Trine bodies? I could have people losing their arms so often.
They always regrow them, except for Yamamoto for some reason, even though he could have.
Yeah, that was one of my things. That's one of the things I don't really care for about Bleach, where it's like, at first you introduce all these characters and they all look really cool and really interesting, but like, how many of them
will you see again?
Well, that and again, my memory's kind of hazy on Bleach, so I could be wrong in saying this, but it's like, how many of them can actually get like any real development?
Yeah.
In contrast, I think World Trigger does that a lot better. Because we get introduced to a lot of new characters in the invasion arc. Like we get introduced to Azuma, we get introduced to Suwa Squad, and afterwards we get to know them even better during the B-Rank Wars. And their personalities continue to get developed and they continue to be relevant. All of them like reappear during the Gallipolar invasion and have a role there. So you feel like all of these characters matter and all these characters have their own stories that are continuing to get focus, and like we're going to check back in on them as the series progresses. No one feels like they're just here for this moment and they'll probably be left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that because, so you have all these characters that are introduced, but it doesn't feel like they're just being introduced to fill a hole so much.
Yeah.
It's established pretty early on, there are this many A-rank squads, there are this many B-rank squads, and then you've got a whole bunch of C-ranks, which, sure, you could develop characters for that forever. But, there's only so many, let's say, important characters in Border that he can introduce. So it's not just him, it doesn't feel like him just introducing characters to, because he doesn't know what to do with the plot. It's him introducing characters because they all contribute to the plot.
Yeah, and because he has a plan for most of them at least.
Yes.
Everyone is, to a certain extent, important and part of the story.
I think we can see seeds of that when Osamu and Kido are talking, like when he's trying to negotiate Hyusei to join the team. And Kido mentions that, we're actually going to have some upper tier B rank agents join our squad. So you're like, okay, so not only will we have some A rank characters go on this eventual expedition to the neighborhood arc, but we will see some of the B rank characters we've gotten to know also come along. So no one's going to be left behind not a whole lot of characters will be left behind for a long period of time. Like a lot of the characters that we've been built up to a really significant amount in this B rank wars will continue to have a role in the story forward, or at least that's the implication. So I really appreciated that Ashihara kind of put that out there. That was like, hey, you won't just see A-rank characters alongside Tamakoma 2 when they eventually do with this expedition. You will see some of these B-rank guys we've gotten to know.
Yeah, and another thing, he always brings them back, and I really appreciate that. Because, you can see these characters that have, just like a little bit, like Suwa Squad in this. Suwa Squad has an important role in the invasion arc, basically to show how things work, because I think Suwa's the first one that gets cubed by a rabbit, if I'm not mistaken. So you see that happen, and you're like, oh, snap, and so he has an important role, but, I honestly didn't really expect to see him again, but then we see him in the rank wars, and it's just so fulfilling to see him and to learn more about these characters, and thanks, Ashihara-sensei.
And we see them before because they control the training room.
Yeah, they fight with Enidora. They buy time for Shinoda to show up. And even when Shinoda shows up, he doesn't just win the fight. They still will have to work together to have this ploy to ultimately take Enidora down, which involves Hisato also, sacrificing himself in a clever feint ploy.
But even before when Kazama and Osamu have the fight, and when the C ranks are enlisted, they are in control of this training room. So it's really nice that they have this role. They are introduced there, and then when the After Okratore invasion arc starts going, then we have a reprise of that. So that's really nice.
Yeah, the characters are multi-purpose. They're not just, single-use characters. Because, you've got Suwa controlling the training room for the C ranks. You've got him being cubed. You've got him in the rank. It's really nice to see. You have a huge cast, but you'll see everybody multiple times doing many things and all supporting the story.
And Hisato's emotional arc about his guilt, it was so good.
I think even just the small thing of having the characters comment on the rank wars matches, we get some returning characters we've seen before, and they give their opinions on what's going on in a fight. I think that reveals a lot about their characters too, and keeps them just relevant in the story, and okay, we're seeing their expertise, we're seeing their opinions on what they're watching, and so that kind of lets us know about them and how they would do things and their interactions with each other when they're just talking to each other. So we kind of get a sense of like different dynamics people have within Border, like different relationships. Just strew that.
So shall we move on to Rank Wars Shokugeki no Yuma?
Before that, I think just to kind of go over the rank wars, over the invasion a little more, one thing I think was really strong about it is that in introducing the After KOTOR characters, we had some, like, really powerful, dangerous characters for the protagonist to go up against, and we had such really high stakes in terms of we need to make sure they do not capture Chica. We need to, rescue as many people as we can, and not let them capture as many people as they are. And so that whole, like, desperation is, like, what really makes a lot of that arc memorable, because we have a character like High Rain who's just incredibly powerful. He's like decimating other A-rank characters. Like even Miwa fighting with the Fujin, he's doing some damage, but like High Rain's still pretty tactical and can get away. But so we have Osamu here, who's a B rank, and we know that Osamu, he's not the strongest guy, but like he's trying his hardest to keep Chica safe. He's just running away from the battle, and he's doing as much as he can to keep pursuers at bay.
He pulls off some pretty cool moves.
Yeah. And yeah, his desperate, gambit, like when he realizes that, Hyren's attacks only work on Trion bodies, and he changes back into his normal body and continues that way and just continues forward in his normal body, exposing himself to so much danger. That's just a really cool one. It's also just a really powerful one. Again, we talked about like when he gets struck by, I believe Mira's the one who attacked him and caused all those wounds. But yeah, and he just does a really clever feint, making them think that he has Chica's cube, but even though he's like given it to Replica, I believe, and it's like...
Oh, he just left it there, and just took a normal Trion cube that he got from attacking High Rain.
At the same time, Replica had already enacted his plan to like force the Africa trips to leave like within a minute, so they had no time to look for the cube, so they just had to flee without it. It was like he really put himself out there for this plan to work, and it like he incurred the cost. He had to be, he got really messed up and had to be hospitalized, but like it worked, and you're like, man, just how much they had to go to get these guys out of here. Because even though we saw victories against them, like, it still felt, there were just too many powerful back trigger users. They couldn't have won this without this last-ditch plan to just force them to retreat.
It was such an exciting moment, but it was also so smart. Will Trigger is so clever.
And it's such a heartbreaking moment. I mean, like, it's really bittersweet because you have the success. Okay, they have to leave. Their ships are leaving. Good job, Replica. Good sacrifice. Osamu, poor Osamu is bleeding out on the ground. And then Replica gets cut in half. Or did he get cut in half earlier and they had
He gets cut in half earlier.
And still keeps going.
Yeah, he gets stuck on the ship.
Yeah.
I love you, Replica. Come back to us.
Yeah, and so that's just another devastating blow, because Yuma's lost, like, one of the only connections he had left to his father, and, like, one of the only people in his life from, like, his own world that he, that he still had around him. So it's like, he's not all alone, because he has Osamu, he has Chica, but, like, it is just such a devastating blow to have something that was, like, kind of his father's, like, legacy to him just disappear like that. The invasion arc, like, it ends in a win, but it's one of those at what cost sort of things. It is incredibly bittersweet, especially because even though after KOTOR loses they don't manage to capture Chica, they still captured, like, 32 other trainees. and they accomplished their other objectives in killing Anadora and abandoning Husei. So in a way, they also succeeded at what they wanted to do. They just didn't get to accomplish like their best possible outcome, but they still, in their own way, succeeded. So it's also incredibly bittersweet in that respect, that both sides won in doing their objectives, but they also lost in other ways, and the border side might have lost harder in this case.
Also, a few border agents get actually killed, but the operators, so it doesn't really matter.
Oh, it certainly matters to the press and the public.
I love that. In the tally given by Usami, I think at the end, she just says, the total tally, a few border agents were killed, all operators.
Yeah. All operators, 6 deaths, all operators in the communication center. Serious injuries 4, missing 32, all C-rank trainees. 0 civilian deaths, though.
Yep, they protected the city. They protected civilians.
But it doesn't matter to the press, because they're still gonna find somebody to blame. Which that's probably one of my favorite moments in all of World Trigger. Is just it's just Osamu.
Press conference?
Yeah, it's just Osamu fighting back against the press. And basically just being like, look, I'm only doing what I can. Like, I'm not some hero. I'm just a guy. I can only do what I can do. Like, I think that was like, Osamu had some really good moments, before then. But I think that was the moment where I was like, you know what? He's a pretty cool guy. I like him.
I'm not a hero. Heroes give away their meat. I want all the meat. Imagine Osamu saying that.
Shoves it all in his mouth. Want me?
I mean, honestly, I was kind of thinking about the same moment too. So,
yeah, that's definitely one of Osamu's defining moments, and it's just so great. He takes a stand for himself, and he articulates himself so well, and yeah, it's just the way afterwards that they're also able to spin what Osamu's saying, like the information he lets loose, like, obviously I'm going to get all the people who are captured back. That's the obvious thing to do. And then the press asks questions, well, wait, how can you do that? And then, like, Hito's quick thinking is like, yes, actually, we are planning expeditions to the neighborhood. And then, like, yeah, Osamu is, like, able to turn the situation where he was going to be turned into the scapegoat for all the losses that happened into a situation that is both protects his reputation and is advantageous to border. So it's just incredibly, like, really smart thinking and also just smart writing on Ashihara's part.
Yeah, I think they say something at one point where a lot of border agents quit border after the invasion arc, but even more people are interested in signing up now.
And then there was one reporter who basically was like, we heard that, like, you used your trigger at school one time, and it's probably because of that information on, your technology was leaked, and that's probably what caused this entire invasion, which I thought was a nice callback, because that almost did get him into a lot of trouble in the beginning.
Yeah, and Osamu's defense that, well, I had to protect them. I couldn't just let someone in front of me, suffer just because it would be against the rules.
Yeah, he says, I'm not trying to explain things away. Even if I had known the information might leak, I would think I still would have used the trigger. That's how bad the situation was.
Yeah.
Even if there was a possibility of future casualties, that wouldn't be a reason to abandon people who needed help right then. I love you, Osamu. You're so good.
Osamu needs to be the next Captain America.
Captain Mikado City.
I think that's what I really like about Osamu as a character, is that he's clearly not a very strong character, but he still has the ability to do his job, and he has the desire to help people, and he does some pretty incredible things for, an incredibly normal person, honestly.
Yeah, they say at one point, like, and this is towards the current chapters of the series, where he learns, spoilers for the next arc, where he learns Spider as one of his sub-triggers. And they explain that most people, I need to get my squad stronger. I'm going to get strong too. Whereas Osamu's is, I can't get strong. I'm not strong. So I'll have my ace get stronger. I can help him get stronger. And it's so refreshing, you know?
Yes.
It's just a unique character arc for a protagonist in a Shonen Jump series where, most protagonists are obsessed with being the best.
Yeah, I'm going to be number one. Which isn't bad at all, but it's nice to have a change.
Yeah, the messages of World Trigger are in general really excellent. I made a tweet a while ago. I really love World Trigger's messages like, it takes more than a week for effort to bear fruit. A weaker person holding off a stronger one is already a victory. And maybe it's not good to be an isolationist dickhead and refugees aren't out to kill you and your family. Maybe you can work with some of them.
I do like, on the not as positive side, I do also like, and this happens during the B-Rank Wars, when Tachikawa says something about, it doesn't matter who wants it more. That's not going to win a battle. And I remember him saying that, and I got so mad but you try really hard, you should win, but...
That's not always how it works. I mean, there's also, he continues on saying, just because you want it a lot, that doesn't mean that you have the right to win, because you don't know how hard the other people you're fighting against have worked in order to get this far and how hard they want it. Something to that effect that was in these rank wars and also just in general, in life, everyone is working their ass off in order to achieve their dreams and succeed. And sometimes when you're competing against someone else in order to achieve that dream, it doesn't come down to who wants it more. It comes down to who put in the most effort and who is achieving the most results.
Yeah, World Trigger is very realistic about there being no shortcuts to progress. Not everything is that easy, and I really respect it for it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It also really shows that Ashihara really does care about all his characters' feelings. We're not gonna just have an unimportant opponent that are just someone to overcome by Tamakoma. We won't learn the motives or anything. No, they want to advance just as much as Osamu's bunch, and they have good reasons for it.
Yeah, everybody has their reasons, and it's good. It's nice.
World Trigger is the best sports manga Shonen Jump. On that subject, we should talk about the B-Rank Wars, which is structured a lot like a sports tournament arc in a sports manga, which I feel is World Trigger's strength. Personally, I really love the B-Rank Wars, and it might be my favorite arc in the series because I love how Ashihara is able to develop each team's what goals, what they are fighting for in these matches, and also what their strengths are, and how these fights end up going about in terms of the strategies at play and how the environment works in favor of some teams to the detriment of other teams, and just all of that interplay. And it's very much like a sports narrative in other sports manga, and I think that's just so unique how Ashihara is able to blend a battle series with a sports series like that. And I think that's what really sets World Trigger apart as a battle shonen series.
Yeah, I agree, for sure.
So, Colton, you mentioned that you didn't enjoy the commentaries as much, though.
Oh man, okay, so this is around the point where I dropped reading World Trigger weekly because upon rereading, I don't want to say the entirety of the B-Rank Wars because the arc technically isn't over, unfortunately, but upon rereading the entirety of what we've gotten of the B-Rank War arc so far, I like it more than I initially did. And I think really the only thing that has kept me from fully enjoying it is, I don't know, I feel like I'm probably in the wrong here, but I understand the need for some commentary on these battles. I think they have their place, but there was just a point in my experience reading World Trigger Weekly where there are just some chapters where it's just mostly, just talking strategy and talking about, basically recapping battles in a way where they, like, basically the commentators talking about their strategy, what they could have done, what they should have done, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I don't know, like, I feel like to me, it's not done in a way that keeps my attention. I feel like it's done in a way where for me, it's kind of a slog to read. Like, there are some points where it's like, I get it, this has its place, but there are some points where I'm like, I wish Ashihara would do more showing than telling. But again, I also know it has its place, so I'm a little conflicted. I'm not going to say, oh, well, Ashihara should just cut this out entirely, but I guess I wish there would be less of that. I don't know. I don't know if that's just me being impatient, or I don't know.
I really like those post-battle commentary chapters where they, like, all the commentators are just, like, talking about what happened in the match and, reflecting on what happened and what could have gone differently. Because to me, it's, like, interesting to, like, think back and see, it's kind of like, when you're playing a game like chess and you're like, oh, if I did this, things would have gone so much more differently. I should have taken this piece. And so from that mindset, when I'm reading these chapters, I'm thinking about, oh, I see. They could have done this, huh? Or maybe even if it isn't just so obvious to the reader that they could have done something, when these commentary characters explain it in that way, you kind of think about what the character's strengths are and what their goals in the match were, and like how they might have made a mistake that caused them to mess up or cause something unexpected to happen. And for me, it makes me interested in, okay, how are they going to learn from this, and how would this battle change if they were to do it differently? And to me, like, where the rank wars are heading in where it just left off, where they're about to rematch with teams they have fought against before, that's to me where I think the real payoff of like that post-battle commentary stuff will come in, because we'll have characters having learned from what their mistakes were, and we'll see that in action. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to when World Trigger returns. And I feel like having those post-battle commentaries is just really useful to just lay it out there. This is what was going on with this team, and this is what could be improved on. And in a way that, it might not be totally obvious when you're just reading the battle. Because I feel when you're reading the battle, like, you take things at face value. But those post-battle commentaries, I think, makes you think about it a different way. And to me, that's very interesting.
And again, that's totally fair, but again, if for some reason, those were the parts where I just lost interest. It wasn't as bad reading it, in chunks. I could just kind of, I'll be honest, I mostly just kind of skimmed through those, because there were some points where it's like, I understand, what point you're getting at here. Like, there were just some points where I felt like I kind of understood the mechanics of what was going on without having to read pages and pages of text, but that's probably just me, though.
I completely get you on the parts that they were repeating stuff from the commentaries in the battle itself. But I would be on Lum's side that I love those strategy talks. Those were some of my favorite parts of these arcs.
Yeah, I understand where you're getting from, and I don't fully agree, but I kinda do. But I do. I guess overall, I do like him. So.
Okay. I figured I was gonna be really the only one who couldn't be bothered. Again, that's probably just mostly my impatience, because I'm mostly just like, I just want to see the battles and how they play out.
I think, because, we all read them chapter to chapter, I do think coming back and reading the volume later, it is a lot stronger when you get the whole battle as one part.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think another thing that works for me about those commentaries is just the character interactions, like seeing the opinions of like characters we've seen before, and we know how they fight and what their thoughts are, and also just some of the, you know, humorous moments they can sneak into when they are bantering with each other. I don't remember which character is exactly involved, but there's an exchange that goes like, one character is explaining like, oh, how something went wrong, and then like the other commentator guy is like, hey, she already knew this, she was just asking you for the sake of the commentary. And he was like, really? and then the person who was like asking Kristen was like, you didn't need to tell him that.
What battle was that? Oh, that was so
I don't
good.
remember. I remember Jin, I think, is the one who is telling the other guy that, like, you know, whoever it was already knew. I feel like that was, I think that was after the Nasu squad fight, actually. Yeah. But that was a great exchange that I just remembered.
I think there are so many good points in the rank wars. Like, overall, like, I don't like tournament arcs.
Really?
I think they tend to be boring. I think they go on too long. I think they're just dragging stuff. And if I were to just think about the rank wars in World Trigger, I would be against it. Because they do go from volume like 10 or 11, and they're still going at volume 19.
It is half the series at this point.
So it's half the series, so it's one of these things that's just like, get on with it. But at the same time, you have the small scale invasion arc in the middle of this. And there's nothing that I could be like, oh, well, just cut out this part. Because everything works to expand on the characters, to, you know, further the plot. I'm really torn. Like, I love the rank wars, but just as a concept, I hate the rank war.
I think that's what makes the B rank war arc work, is that it's not just a straight tournament arc, and that there are other like subplots going on. Like, you know, right in the middle of the B rank wars, you know, you basically have, you know, everyone up top at border trying to figure out, you know, how to go about this upcoming expedition to Afto Crater, and you know, them basically interrogating Enadora, and then you have Hyusei deciding what he wants to do, and you know, everything involving the neighbors, I think, is really interesting. And I think, you know, if you're not as into the B rank war stuff, that you at least have that stuff to kind of look forward to whenever Ashihara decides to focus on that stuff.
Yeah, and then we have basically Osamu's journey to becoming a better captain and a better asset to his team, which I love that evolution. I especially like don't get me wrong, I love the spider tactics, but also I especially like the assistance Tachikawa squad gives him. By, you know, Izumi giving some tips, and then here's the weakest member of our squad, just find him, beat him 100 times, then I'll teach you some stuff.
Yeah. And I love...
Yuiga is great.
He's so good. I love him. He's terrible. But that makes him great. And I love how when they introduce him, he's just like, oh no, I don't want to do this, oh god. And then like he beats Osamu, you know, because even though he basically got into an A-rank squad on a favor, you know,
yeah.
He has like, some skill. He's
not weak. He's just weaker than every other A-rank person. But I just love how he's all like, ha ha ha, I thought you could take me out? Oh, I'm so great. Like, oh, you're so awful. I love you.
I will always be there to train my precious Kohai.
Yeah. Someone's like, okay, whatever, buddy.
Yeah, and he actually gets disappointed when Osamu loses that in the match with Ninomiya, Azuma, and is it just Ninomiya? Oh, Kageura. Yeah, in the match when Azuma snipes him out. Yeah.
Oh man, which is such a cool move. Like, I love that Ashihara doesn't shy away from destroying his main characters, because Osamu gets taken out so fast. He just gets blown
And even
away.
Yuma kind of struggles a little bit, which honestly, after seeing him just kind of win most of his battles for so long, was kind of nice to see.
Yeah, like, I like Yuma, but I think him being so strong is kind of a detriment to his character development.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have those, like, a lot of the other characters will have those kind of like, someone needs to get stronger, maybe not physically, but, tactically. Chica has to get over, being able to shoot people. And, like the super strong characters, I think, are often harder to develop. Like Jin doesn't develop that much.
Yeah.
Jin is basically interesting because of the responsibility that he has to bear on his shoulders because of his side effect.
Mm-hmm.
And Yuma is interesting because, well, basically because he's loyal to Osamu and he is slowly dying, so Osamu and Chika have to give him a go so that he has something to live for.
Jin, at least compared to Yuma, has a lot of charisma, I feel like.
Yeah, and he also has this sense of guilt too that we kind of see explored, like when he talks to Osamu, when Osamu's trying to invite him to join Tamakoma 2, and Jin's like, no, I got things to do, but he apologized to Osamu because, like, Osamu, it's not your fault for things that happened in the invasion, it's mine because, like, I saw all the possible outcomes that could have happened, and I intentionally steered things in a direction that would lead to the least amount of civilian casualties, but it came at a great cost. Like, Replica is gone now, and you had to suffer a lot of damage, so I'm really sorry about that. So, Jin puts up, like, this front of, like, being super easygoing and chipper, but, like, I think he really is masking a lot of, like, stress and insecurity about having the responsibility to, see the future and, the choices he has made and, thinking about, did I make the right choice here?
Yeah, it's the moments of quote unquote weakness that I think both Yuma and Jin really are developed well. Like early on, I think it's shortly after Jin gives up Fujin. You see him laying in his bed, and I think he says something like, did I do the right thing? Like, or something like, I had to do this. But you can tell he's not happy with this. And he always has kind of that kind of smug, happy face on. So it's really, it's nice to see those moments because, yeah, you're not going to really develop a super strong character easily by, we're just going to battle it out. So, like, when Yuma kind of loses, he develops so much more than when he just keeps winning. And I really appreciate that.
Jin is also probably the best example of a future side character I've seen in fiction. So we get the sense that his side effect is so non-specific and brittle due to the diverging future crossroads that are so unpredictable that he may not know exactly what to do. And at the same time, it introduces many dangers and set up character arcs so well, like in the premonition of the possibility of Osamu's death and Miwa coming to save him, because you guys remember that we had it all the time looming over us when we had the large scale invasion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's brought up super early.
And above all else, it's great that his ability requires a lot of thought from him. It's not just I know what's going to happen and we should keep it in mind, like let's say Fairy Tale's Charles. And it encourages more tactical thought instead of being a plot shortcut or the easy way out.
It also helps that Jin sometimes seems to go in a direction that Jin didn't foresee, because sometimes people change the future and that changes like what he sees. Like when Jin tells Kurosama that like you are gonna get cut down in this battle during the first invasion. So, like, when Kurosama was fighting Hiren, he's like, I'm gonna do my best to not let Jin's prediction come to pass and, like, defeat Hiren and not let him get to Osamu. And, like, he doesn't succeed, but whatever he did, it changes the future slightly. And Jin is like, whoa, what did you do? And then, also, in the Galapula invasion, there are two instances of something that go happening that Jin did not expect. First is when Yotaro goes off to see Hyuse.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yotaro MVP.
Yeah. And Jin is like, what? You're going there? Crap. I gotta change plans. And also, because he told Tachikawa before the Galapula invasion that he would get cut down. And so Tachikawa's like, well, okay. Well, I'll fulfill Jin. Yeah. And so he and Kanami, like, have intentionally make it come through in their battle with Gatlin. And it's like, Ah, it's super awesome.
So good.
Yeah, that was pretty surprising, honestly. So
Yeah, I do appreciate. I think Jin's ability is kind of cheaty because I mean any future sight thing is a little cheaty, but I love how it's nerfed by here are X number of possibilities. It can go any way.
see, that's the thing. I appreciate it because it should be, for lack of a better word, it should be a lot more hacks, and it should be so much more overpowered than it actually is. Like, it should be a lot more of a shortcut, but it kind of isn't.
Yeah, it's shackled down quite a bit.
Yeah, but it makes sense since it's, even if he is a great tactician, it's not easy when you have so many different possibilities that could happen.
Yeah.
In my opinion, when you plan to make a future vision character, Jin is one of the best examples to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Use them as your standard. So I want to talk about one of the later B rank battles when they're going against OG Squad.
And Ikoma.
Yeah, and Chica's little hop.
Oh, my favorite move.
It's one of the greatest moves in the entire series, and it's just so simple. And
that
it's
hop.
I don't know anybody that read that and was like, whatever. Everybody I've talked to about that has just been like, oh my god.
I love it so much.
It's so good, and it's not some crazy, like, oh, and we all planned this ahead of time. It's just her thinking on the fly. They can't see these. I can trick them. I
like the little power move she has with Osamu.
Oh, man. Team up, man.
That honestly was pretty amazing. Can I also just say Ikuma is the funniest character in World Trigger?
He's so amazing. I mean, like, he comes in, you're like, this guy's a weirdo. And like half a chapter later, you're like, this guy's the best weirdo.
All of his jokes and his punchlines always hinge on like these like anti-climaxes. Like what was it where I think he's battling against Yuma, and he's all like, "Yeah, I'm gonna cut you down." Wait, nope, this isn't supposed to happen. Nope, stop. You're not supposed to be hitting me. Oh, well, I guess I give up.
I love that.
Why is he always looking into the camera when he wins?
I love how his whole squad is a bunch of goofballs in this because in the sequence when all the teams are like planning their strategies for the upcoming match, his team is just talking about what's going to be on the lunch menu the next day, and Ikoma's like, "Yeah, it's eggplant curry. It's going to be super yummy."
And it also speaks so much about the strengths, since with actually having next to no prep to the rank battles, they are still ranked number 3.
Yeah.
And they don't take this seriously at all. I love this.
They're beasts. And just, hey, what are you going to have for lunch? Well, they're so...
Chica is so cute. And Mario, you are cute too.
That was a great exchange.
I really love how they're juxtaposed to against the other two teams. That was honestly pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. I mean, there are things I love about every single B rank match, but that one was just so good. Oh, Ikoma could be in like anything, I think, and you just be like, "Oh, this is great!" automatically.
Pretty much, yeah. That's how I felt. He's the character I want to see again the most.
I'm sure we will. I mean, considering he's one of the top ranked B ranked characters.
Yeah, that entire match is pretty good, though.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about any other specific matches, or talk about the Galapula invasion?
Let's talk about the invasion.
Yeah, that was a part of the story I wasn't expecting. That was an interesting, neat little like subplot. Again, like I mentioned earlier, kind of going on amongst the B rank wars that I think kept the arc interesting.
It was a good interruption because it came just at a good point in the story where, it's pretty much the midway point in the rank wars for Tamakoma 2, because they just had this devastating loss against Ninomiya squad, Kagura squad, and Azuma Squad. And then they're like really having to retool their strategy and think about, okay, how can we build a stronger team? Osamu has to think about, okay, what can I do as the captain of this team in order to support my teammates better? They're thinking about who they should get as another member, another attacker to support Yuma. And so right as they're thinking about all of this, we have this Gallipola invasion that kind of is a nice break from the rank wars, which we've been like following for about a year of serialization at that point. And so we spend like some time in this Gallipola invasion, and we learn some new details about the neighborhood, because we learned that Autokrator has like some colonies. And you mention there's one other besides Gallipola that, they send Trion soldiers to help Gallipola, but we don't see any of their human members.
Yeah, it starts with an R, like Rhoda something.
Rhoda Cronin.
Rhodochrome, yeah.
I do love that we talked about a lot about strategy in World Trigger, but I do love this one little thing that Gallipola plans just to invade the headquarters and just do a little bit of damage so that Earth doesn't come after them, but Eftokrator still instead.
Yeah, I love. It kind of, in a way, mirrors the factions in Border itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not exactly, but yeah, you have, okay, we're kind of a sovereign state, or, like we bow down to Afto, but, we'll do their bidding on our terms.
Yeah, we're not going to become their scapegoats. We're not going to make Meiden come after us. We're going to fulfill the mission that Africator assigned us, but we're not going to do anything beyond that would make us a target. Because we are not going to take their crap for them. And I really like that. I really like that we had, like, this, faction that is technically aligned with Africator, but is very hostile towards them. And when we see, like, flashbacks later on to, like, when Africator invaded Gallipolia and kind of made it their colony, from Regi's perspective, and it's like, okay, so there's some bad blood between these two, like, nations here, and, they have no choice but to obey Africator's orders, but, like, they are not on their side, and there's, like, and it also, like, opens up, like, more questions about, okay, these, the wars going on in the neighborhood, like, it seems there are more factions we're not even realizing, and there's like, it's even more complicated circumstances, because there's so much politics within the neighborhood itself we aren't privy to, but we kind of get a glimpse of them here through Gallipola.
Yeah, and it's interesting because of the relationship you see between the two countries. When they don't succeed in their mission, it's not oh no, our world's going to be destroyed. It's, well, we tried. I guess we'll try again.
Yeah, I mean, they can't go home until they succeed the mission. And they mentioned that, okay, we have a few more days until that we can stay here before, our Gallipola is out of Meiden's orbit. We have to think this over, figure out what we gotta do. And so, like, I think there's going to be a second attack from them, because that's what Gatlin was saying. Like, he needs some time to think it over. But, like, yeah, it's very interesting to see, like, okay, they're far away from us, so this one failure is not gonna matter so long as we ultimately succeed in the end, so let's think about this a little bit. And that was very interesting to me. So I'm very interested to see, like, what's gonna come out of when Gallipola like, makes their counterattack, or, like, their second attempt to take out the expedition ship.
Come back, Ashihara-sensei.
One more thing I like about this arc is the Husei and Jin moment. We actually have another clever bit of strategy of Jin offering, I can do you a favor. I can return your trigger, or if I win, you'll have to do me a favor, and presumably join Tamakoma too. But then he actually circumstances are manipulated in such a way that Hyusei actually has to ask to join Tamakoma too. So in the end, Jin still wins despite losing the bet.
Oh, like that was a good use of like that Jin's foresight to like, you know, like he loses the bet, but he actually wins in the end. It's so good. Oh, and it makes sense for Hyusei to accept the deal on those terms too, because like, you know, he just wants to get back to After Couture to prevent his master from getting sacrificed. So like he has a reason to work with Border until they get to After Couture. And I like how during the negotiation they're discussing it on those terms. Like Hyusei's going to be a member of our team until we get to After Couture, and neither Kido and Osamu like mention beyond that because they don't know. And I like how there was thought put into that on both sides, that what they were trying to negotiate and how they were trying to, and how Osamu in particular was trying to convince Kido to allow this thing that is ostensibly, or at least overtly, it seems only beneficial to Tamakoma 2 to have Hyusei on their team, but the case he makes to sell it as, okay, this will be beneficial for Border 2, but it also gives Kido an opportunity to achieve his objective, which is just securing Chika for the ship.
And he actually uses Netsuki's political tactics by planting Rindo so that he says the argument against bringing Hyusei, so that Osamu has a lead-in to say his counter argument.
Yeah, like I love seeing kind of that payoff. Like, oh well, you did this to me. I can learn. So.
Oh, that's so satisfying. That's like another one of my favorite moments in the series. Like, that entire conversation, that negotiation between Osamu and Kido. Because all the word games, all the like politics involved in that one conversation, as both of them are trying to achieve their own ends and trying to manipulate the other, and like how they both walk away getting what they want, is just so good.
It's so... There was a tag a number of years ago at this point on Twitter that I think it was Osamu plus 10 years. And so it was a bunch of 25-year-old Osamu. And almost all the versions I saw weren't him like leading a great squad. It was him leading Border. They're like, yeah, he's going to take over for Kido because look how good he is at this. And he's 15 years old.
You know, I never even really considered that possibility, but now that you say that, it's just kind of like a, wow, duh, how have I never seen this?
It'll be really interesting if Kido turns out to have been an Osamu-like character in his past. Like, when he was, like, more of a field agent, and he might have been like Osamu, in that he wasn't a very capable fighter, but he was a great strategist and a really good leader.
I could see that.
And so that's why he's leader of Border HQ now.
Osamu will be a great politician. He's already sweaty enough.
But, man, I think we caught up on our thoughts of basically every arc, unless you guys have some stray thoughts on B-Rank Wars or the Gallipolis stuff.
I think we might have brought it up earlier, but I really do just appreciate the journey that Osamu and rest of his group take just to, like, improve their strategy and to improve their individual strengths. The whole thing about him incorporating Spider in his tactics during the B-Rank Wars is it really reminded me of, like, later in My Hero Academia where Midoriya decides, oh, hey, what if I used, a one-for-all in my legs or whatever? It's like, duh. Like, that's such a great idea for a power-up. And I think...
Yeah. And it's one of those, like, well, this is kind of obvious. How did I not think about it? You know? Like,
it's such a great fit for Osamu. And I really like how, even if he's taken out, he's still kind of there in spirit helping his team a little bit.
Yeah, he's still supporting.
Like, you know, his new ability just makes Yuma stronger as well, which I think is a great contribution to his abilities as well. And, you know, the whole thing about Chika using lead bullets, like, that's another, like, duh, how did we not figure this out before? Like, that's such a great, like, I think that ability really fits her.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that this can be combined with sniper triggers, but yeah, it kind of makes sense, especially for Chika, and it makes for a great team formation, which we essentially see in the Kakizaki and Kotori squad match, which is great.
Yeah, I just love that shift Osamu makes from wanting to make himself stronger to make his team stronger, and like the results that pay off of that in that match with Kakizaki and Kotori. And also we didn't talk about Chika's arc a whole lot, but I also like her arc where she's so squeamish about killing people.
Really just hurting people in general, I guess.
Yeah, hurting people.
Mm.
Yeah, and because she's carrying so much guilt because she believes that just by existing she's hurt people because neighbors have gone after her for like her large try-on, so people close to her have gotten hurt because of that. And so like seeing her kind of learn to value herself was an incredibly interesting character arc. Like that scene where Usami first tells Reiji that, you know, they want to make Chika start valuing herself, and then Reiji is like taking this in, and then he, you know, goes to talk to Chika and like tries to reinforce that lesson to her. That, you know, you need to protect yourself above all else. That was an amazing scene. Chika, I just like how her arc in that she starts to learn to value herself more, but also the way in which she is able to kind of slowly start overcoming that mental block of hers that she can't kill people, by like using the strategy that simulate what she is afraid of, like people exploding and stuff, like that idea that people are getting destroyed like that through using the lead bullets, which don't like look like people are getting hurt that much, but it is such an effective strategy. I like how she's overcome the way in which she's overcome that, and like how she was able to do that through like just making, you know, good connections and friends with other sniper characters who were able to teach her that. Like, what's his name? The guy
Emma.
From Ninomiya's
Yuzuru.
Yuzuru Emma, yeah. So I really like that, and yeah, I just in general think that it's going in a great direction. Because she's also become more assertive and like more willing to take risks through the rank war matches. Because, you know, before, like during the match with Ninomiya Kakegurui squad, like when Osamu gets taken out, she, you know, tries to shoot in the building to, you know, do her part, like, cause she sees that Osamu's taken out and she's like, okay, I need to do something now. Temporarily, she's like able to like get over her block and like just go for it. And even though she didn't like end up hitting anyone, like that shows an effort on her part to like improve as well. That's like really endearing. It's like, you know, oh man. And it's like, so it's really satisfying then when she does use the lead bullets later, and she like, it feels like, yeah, there's just so much progress that everyone in Tamako 2 is making to become a better team and like overcome their personal weaknesses to like become stronger as a unit.
I find it interesting how like, yeah, the lead bullets are a great solution to her mental block, but it's really mostly a short-term thing, because at some point she like, you know, it helps her team more, sure, but she still hasn't completely gotten over her mental block, which I still think is kind of interesting. It's more of a short-term solution than it is a long-term solution, which I think is pretty interesting.
Essentially, the goal is for Osamu and Chika to eventually be able to score points on their own. Both Osamu and Chika essentially take after Yuma in the theme of self-sufficiency in the plot threads. They don't want to completely rely on Yuma in battle, and at the same time, Chika has to learn to rely on others, since, as Sid has mentioned, she doesn't value her life, and thinks it's unfair that everyone is getting kidnapped by neighbors, but herself. Chika is brilliant. I love how far she's come. I love the character arc Ashihara's constructed for her. And I love that both Osamu and Chika represent different kinds of weakness that they need to overcome. In the case of Osamu, it's physical, and in Chika's case, it's psychological.
I kind of like how everybody in Tamakoma 2 is sort of coming terms to is kind of battled with this like internal conflict of basically they're all battling with their own sort of self-worth. I mean, obviously that's Chika's entire character is she feels guilty because she feels like she's the reason that, people around her get hurt, so she doesn't really value herself that much. And, with Osamu, he's constantly struggling with trying to be, an asset to his team. And, there are times where that gets him down. And then even Yuma, where, at one point in the very beginning, there was a point in his life where he didn't really feel like he had much purpose, and he just figured, well, I might as well, like, there's nothing for me to look forward to in life. Like, why keep living? Which I think is a very, understated, I guess, facet of his character.
Yeah, he's kind of a tragic hero that way, and Chika essentially gives both him and Osamu the shonen motivation for the two main characters to build a team around. And she is all this while being a character type that Ashihara claims he's not good at writing in the first place. And still she's become one of the most compelling characters in the series for me. So this takes one hell of a good storyteller.
I think that's another really impressive thing about World Trigger is that, Chika is the reason they formed their team, but Chika still has to overcome certain mental blocks, and she's getting better, but she's still not the most capable fighter compared to a lot of other people in Border. But she also still doesn't feel like a weak character.
She's a trying cannon.
Yeah. They form the team around her, and at first they feel the need to protect her, but she doesn't always need to be protected, which I think is a great thing about a lot of the female characters in World Trigger, which is very refreshing, because that's something I personally always look for in a Jump series is how well developed are the female characters and can they hold their own in the fight? And I think World Trigger does a great job of that.
Do you remember how Chika blows up the wall of the Border headquarters, and then
that was a great moment,
and then she essentially becomes Kinuta's surrogate daughter?
Yes! She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, it's okay, don't worry. She's like,
it's
yeah,
okay,
right,
don't
man.
worry. Satori will pay for everything.
That was actually pretty cute.
No.
But I think that's about it for most of the arcs, though, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think we've moved on to character discussions. For a while now.
And are there any other characters people want to talk about? I want to kind of bring up Katora and how I like her, her role in the story has become, because she has become a mentor figure for Osamu, and in the B rank course, when Osamu's trying to learn Spider, and we learn details that Katora was once kind of like Osamu, and that she doesn't have a lot of try-on, so she's not a really powerful attacker, but she learned how to use her abilities in ways through a lot of hard work and effort and training in order to become the ace of our Ashiyama squad. And so to me, that really recontextualizes how she's treated Osamu earlier in the series, because it's she sees a lot of herself and who she was when she started out in him. And so that's why she's both frustrated in him, but also, willing to take a chance on him. But she's first, Osamu, you gotta learn a little bit of humility, and you gotta learn, to not expect to become the best so quickly, because it takes a lot of time. And she tells him the story about how Ninomiya asked for, training from, who was it?
I think it was Izumi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though, at that point, Mia was already, super skilled, because, Mia recognized his own weaknesses and knew he needed to get help with them. And so, that was a really interesting scene to me that was okay, so, look, even the people who are, at the top of B rank, even they have to ask for help. And even they are continually working hard to improve themselves. And you're not going to get there. You're not going to be the best without putting in enough effort. And like, you're starting out by asking, you're trying, but you're like, you need to not expect so much so fast. You need to like take it slow, and you also need to, you really focus on the learning more than the results right now.
She's definitely proud of being an A rank.
Yeah, I like that she's this type of character that's like, yeah, she's a very proud character, but once you find out that she used to be, on the weaker side, but she's worked so hard to become an ace, you're like, oh, okay, I guess she deserves that attitude a little bit.
It makes sense that she wants so much respect, and it makes sense that if Osamu reminds her of her past, it makes sense that she's so harsh on Osamu.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Like, even her gag of, wanting, respect and adulation from other people, especially people, higher up than her, is really made more interesting by that revelation, because it's like, oh, because she wants, people to recognize her efforts, too, and so that's why she also is getting jealous when it seems like Osamu is getting more praise than her at times. When it seems like he's getting more attention from Kurasama than her.
Aww. Oh, I love that.
And of course that scene where Kanoi blows her off, even though she's lower ranked to her, and that breaks her heart. That was funny. But yeah, so I think she's really Sekitora's really interesting too. I'm looking forward to seeing where her role in the story will go forward as well, both in terms of the dynamic she has with Osamu, but also her as her own character. But are there any other characters you guys really want to talk about? Because there are so many characters in World Trigger that I think are really interesting, but we'd be all here all day.
Did we talk about Yuma enough? Because have we talked a lot about his backstory? I don't think we have.
I don't think we have. No.
So it's rather simple in a way. It's Yuma's a cocky hothead, and he thought he was stronger than he actually was. Then a father comes to save him, and dies in the process, creating his weapon. But even with this basic scenario, Ashihara manages to put a creative spin that makes Yuma quite a tragic hero. So from the start of the series, even though we don't know it yet, Yuma is slowly dying. And once he learns his dad's old friend from Border is dead, he no longer has any life plans. So this forces Osamu and Chika to personally involve themselves into finding a goal for him, and this is where the friendship ends up solidifying. And in a medium where the main character's goal often just ends up wanting to be the very best, for which too often there doesn't have to be a reason, I don't have to tell you, this is really unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we probably can't talk about Yuma without mentioning Replica in some regard. So Replica, in addition to being literally a great exposition device, they're also a living memento of Yuma's dad and his wish for his son to become self-sufficient. So his catchphrase is, "You're the one who decides that, Yuma," which is his dad constantly reminding him to be responsible. Yugo has so many great life lessons, like don't always listen to your parents. And maybe it's Osamu's responsibility over people around him, despite his weakness, which allowed them to become such great friends with Yuma in such a short amount of time, and why Yuma is so loyal to his captain. So. Yeah, the theme of self-sufficiency has popped up a lot here, which is in itself weird since World Trigger also strikes me as a very collectivist manga, given how much emphasis is put on teamwork, which I really like.
Yeah.
You think finding the best middle ground between self-reliance and collectivism is going to be a point of discussion in the manga in the future?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
It could be. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there probably will be a point in which characters will have to decide, will we fight on our own, or will we fight together as a team? And I think that will be very interesting. Like, in the setting of, like, a fight in the neighborhood, like, whether they have to fight as an individual, like, against someone, or they have to, or they choose to fight as a team. And I think that will be an interesting moment when it happens.
I could see there maybe being a point where they get to After Crater, and maybe they're just thrown into, like, the worst situation possible, in where, you know, like, they spend all this time trying to figure out the best possible combination of all their abilities, but maybe the cards just aren't in their favor, and they like, the conditions probably aren't right for them to be able to use their strategy, and it just falls apart. Because obviously, you know, the B rank wars compared to, like, actual battle is obviously a lot more B rank wars comparatively are a lot more organized, and obviously, you know, as we saw with the After Crater invasion, you know, these battles are a lot more chaotic and they're not as organized. So
yeah, you don't have that setup time.
I could see that maybe something that they have to face eventually.
I think that's one interesting contrast between, like, how border fights and how, like, a lot of the neighbor teams fight, is that when we usually see, like, a neighbor character, like, fight in both invasions, they're, like, usually fighting by themselves against, like, a team of border agents. So, like,
that's
they fight as individuals against, like, a group of against, like, a team of characters. And that might contribute into how, like, they lose. That's a really interesting thing to me that maybe the series will make more explicit later. Is, like, you know, we've seen in both invasions, like, ultimately it's a group of characters against one neighbor character. And there are some exceptions to that. Well, no, because even Yuma versus Visa, like, he has Replica beside him giving him advice and stuff. So, like, even then you could say that's a team of characters. That's a group effort to take down an enemy.
I'd argue that some of Galapala work together a little bit. And the you know, not all of them entirely work by themselves.
Not all of them were alone.
Yeah,
that's true.
But also on the side of Border, we have Ninomiya, who insists every member has to be able to earn points by themselves. So this is going to be going to be a very interesting match between Tamakoma, which is very team driven, given the fact that you have one main point earner and the others actually acting as support, and Ninomiya squad, which is just, you know, we do have strategy as a team, but basically we all earn points. We all can fight individually as well.
I think that's going to be a really interesting, like, what's the word I want to use? Like, compromise, maybe, between, like, being able to be self-sufficient, but also be, you know, contribute to the team effort, you know, work as part of the broader collective unit.
Yeah, I wonder if that's going to come back and bite Tamakoma 2 later, because they spend so much time working on this on this strategy as a team that requires them to work as a collective unit. But, you know, individually, I guess besides Yuma, it's sort of questionable how well they can work on their own.
Maybe that's why Osamu's feeling so uneasy when Chapter 164 ends before the next match.
Probably.
Yeah, I guess they wouldn't really be surprised by that, since they're constantly considering it. And they're constantly being reminded by Ninomiya, as we mentioned before, or Kikuchihara. Which, by the way, can I talk about Kazama Squad a little, since I do love them. So Kazama's peculiar respect for Osamu, despite the difference in the strengths, is very interesting, especially since Osamu also ends up seeking his validation. At every match, we hear Kazama's thoughts on how Osamu did in that match. And he always takes his advice despite being on different sides in Border. Which I do really like, that all the sides in Border, yeah, they can be friends with one another, sure. And Kikuchihara is a giant prick, and he's great. he brings so much fun into the dynamic, and I do like his backstory a lot, about his side effect being enhanced hearing. Everyone talks about what lame side effect he has, and I can hear you guys. I can hear you. So it makes his behavior quite understandable, even if it was kind of repeated later on with Kageura, didn't you think?
A little bit, yeah. Not
They're similar, but not totally the same.
I really like how Kikuchihara starts out and he's just like, look at this loser, Osamu, he's so lame, blah, blah, blah. And as like, you get later in the series and he's like, just like, well, maybe you're just like 90% lame, okay? And then I think at one point they actually like talk to each other.
Yeah, and Tokieda is just like, wait, Kikuchihara talked to someone other than his own squad?
Yeah, he's like,
that's rare. And it's like, even after Kikuchihara tells Osamu, well, you're kind of arrogant for thinking you can get better so fast. But, like, it's still just the fact that he's taking the time to talk to Osamu and is, like, being so honest with him that he even, like, it has respect enough for Osamu to, like, do that when he usually doesn't even talk to people outside of Kazamo's squad is super interesting.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I really appreciated that. I used to hate him. I'm only capable of hating one World Trigger character at a time.
and right now it's Ninomiya.
No, it's Katori now.
I love Katori. She's
first it was Kikuchihara, then it was Ninomiya for a long time because that guy's an asshole. But now it's
Katori.
Katori? Yeah, because I really don't like her. I like the rest of her squad. I don't like her. Like, she had that backstory.
I love that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, she's really immature and really irresponsible. And it's like, especially after the backstory when you learn, like, how Hannah lost so much. And, like, she, like, was like, oh, I'm gonna join border with you, Hannah. Well, I'll help you, with your thing. But, like, she is now being so irresponsible. And even though she's so talented,
so
she's just so lazy and she's just so apathetic. But I like Katori because I think she'll have an interesting character arc.
I look forward to a character arc for her. But as she is now...
As for Yuiga, I hope he's also quite a terrible person, but I hope he eventually gets inspired by Osamu and starts pulling his own in Tachikawa squad.
Yeah,
I want to see Osamu beat him those 100 times, and Yuiga's like, uh-oh.
Oh yeah, Yuiga's like, oh. I accept that my student has overcome me, and then just Izumi decks him in the face and completely undercuts the pathos.
And then he says, "Well, I'm gonna retire now. Maybe I'll become a high school tutor."
One Kazama squad member who I really think is overrated is Utagawa, who is a good addition to the dynamic as he always has to apologize for his teammates' brashness. Kazama is just unintentionally a dick. Kikuchihara is intentionally a dick, and Utagawa just has to say sorry to everyone.
He has to be twice as nice as everybody else just to even them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the scene when he's talking to Usami, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're looking really good," and Kikuchihara's like, "Yeah, you gained weight." And he's just like, "Oh gosh."
And then Kodera is like, "Oh, I wish I could say something like that to her."
Yes.
I guess totally unrelated, but two characters that I'm sort of indifferent to on their own are Yotaro and Hyusei, but when combined together, they make, like, the most underrated, like, buddy cop kind of dynamic ever.
Yeah, like, I don't like Yotaro very much on his own, but, like, you join him with Hughes and, like, dang, kids. That's an awesome team up.
I really just want to see more of them.
Yotaro walks a fine line between very funny and annoying to me, but I do essentially like him for him just trying to be as stoic and badass as everyone else, and just trying to appear as a wise mentor, especially to Husei.
Yes.
Oh, Husei is very talented. I taught him a lot of things.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, whatever.
I like how Yotaro is like the first person Yusei develops like a begrudging respect towards.
Yes.
Or at least he actually seems to like hanging around.
Yeah.
I like how the hardest thing he has to deal with is anything involving him giving up his snacks.
I also like the detail that Yotaro's capybara Rajimaru doesn't actually respect him.
Yes. And isn't Raijinmaru like a girl and everybody thinks it's a guy? And
I think so, yeah.
Can't say anything, so I love Raijinmaru.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say all the mascot characters in the series are amazing. You've got Raijinmaru, who's amazing. You've got Replica, who's amazing. Kinuta is amazing in his own way. And then there's Battle Cat.
Oh god, Evil Kitty from F-Talk-Retour. I love this guy.
Who is also awesome.
I want plushes of all of them, including Kinuta.
Yes. And let's not forget Anadorad. We need
Anadorad!
that too.
Anadorad, oh.
Yes! Oh my gosh.
The Bilby guy from a forum, also known as Belle D. Lucas, made a lot of memes about the evil kitty from F-Talk-Retour. Unfortunately, now ODA is down. The forum is down, and we can't view them. But I wish I had saved them now.
That cat's up to no good.
Always.
The cat is the secret true main villain of World Trigger. He's the leader of After-Tour.
I see. So I guess I don't mean to be the downer here, but I guess and I think we even got a question about this. But I think the thing is like I like World Trigger's characters enough, but I think the problem I have with most of the cast is like I have a hard time. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the character designs don't stand out to me a lot, and I also have trouble remembering a lot of like everybody's name. So like, I'll fully admit sometimes you guys bring up certain characters, and like I totally haven't been secretly like using the World Trigger wiki to try to remember which characters are which, because I have such a hard time. I don't know these there are some characters I really like. Like, I think early on, I was sort of attracted to Jin, because again, I thought he, at least as far as the beginning goes, I thought he had the most charisma, and I thought he had the most interesting power. But, as the series goes on, I really like Osamu, I like Chika, Yuma isn't, he isn't the most interesting character, but I do like him enough. Who else? I really liked, Kageura. I think his character's really interesting and his power's really interesting. I'm trying to think. And that's the problem too, is there are so many other characters that like I get mixed up with, that it's just, I don't know. I have a hard time keeping up with a lot of the characters, again, because some of them have kind of the same face, or their designs just don't stand out to me too much, unfortunately. So I don't know. I like the cast enough, but yeah.
I think it does make it difficult because, to tell characters apart and stuff, because you have all these Japanese characters that aren't like crazy, like we're also aliens and stuff, or we're in a fantasy. They are in a sci-fi world, but it's so easy to see the neighbors look fairly different. Like they'll have different hairstyles and stuff, and
they have horns.
The horns, and Yuma has fluffy white hair, and so yeah, I hear that. There's not a ton of super uniqueness to the character designs.
Yeah, I'm actually one of those people who don't mind the same face designs. it's a stylistic choice that I don't mind in South Park, so why should I mind it here, really? And in a way, it makes the personality of them stand out all the more to me.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like a bad thing, but I do think it does make it a little harder to not so much tell people apart, but their appearance isn't super memorable. Like if you were to put my beloved baby brother, Osamu, alongside, 10 other people with black hair and glasses, he's not really going to stand out.
I feel I could pick Osamu out in that lineup, but I think, in general, it's hard because there are a lot of characters that do look similar enough to each other. There aren't designs that are, like, completely, like, lookalikes, but, like, when I was first reading World Trigger week to week, I did get Kazama and Miwa confused sometimes. Exclusively because they're characters that have, black hair and stuff. So it's like, just that could be trouble sometimes because there are so many characters and there is some overlap in their designs. And so because there are so many characters, because they're not, a lot of characters will go a long time without being in the series. So if you're like reading it week to week, you might go months without seeing a character. And so when they come back, you're like, oh, wait, who is this again?
Yeah, who?
But like, all the characters have distinct personalities, and I do think most of them are quite interesting. It's just very hard, like, when you're reading it, like, on a week-to-week basis, to remember all of them and keep track of all of them.
I will give you that in the case of Jin and Arashiyama, who have the same hairstyle and body type and really everything, except for hair color.
I mean, I actually got Arashiyama and Tachikawa confused sometimes when I was reading it week to week before. But this reread really helped me like appreciate like all the nuances and differences between characters. So now coming out of it, like I feel I have a firmer grasp of who each character is, even some of the less important ones. But like definitely week to week, there was just times where like, oh. How many A-rank characters are there? Which squad is this again? So there is trouble with that sometimes, just because of like the sheer amount of characters, and it's usually just kind of the case in a series that has a lot of characters like this. Like even with One Piece or Bleach, there are times where I'm like, wait, who is this again? I forget. But it is sometimes harder with World Trigger because there are some similar faced characters, but I don't think that there are any like truly like look-alike designs compared to like maybe Oda. Like it doesn't. Well, even no, with Oda there are a lot of kind of characters with similar body types, but there are also
female
really
characters,
especially of one type, yeah.
But there are but that series, there's also so many more extreme character designs that there's so much more contrast. But with World Trigger, you have a lot of more normal looking, human dudes. It's not like another series where you have like really distinctly and maybe strangely designed characters. Like with Bleach, there was a lot of those, and like with Naruto, even there was a lot of characters that had like these weird things. Like Gaara has these that had those eyeshadows and like that backpack, or like Orochimaru has this pale skin and like this purple eyeliner thing. So it's like there aren't a lot of characters that have extreme looks like that in World Trigger.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing I feel kind of weird about World Trigger is that I appreciate how clean Ashihara's art is, but I also feel like sometimes, especially with his character designs, that's sort of a detriment. But that's just my opinion.
I will criticize one thing in Ashihara's art. He can't draw crying, unfortunately. Do you remember the, what was his name?
Is it Murakami?
Yeah, the Murakami flashback.
I use those pictures of him crying when I'm upset at one of my editors. The current World Trigger editor, Marlene, finds it super creepy. So whenever we're having an argument over something or she upsets me, I send her one of those pictures, and she's just like, "Oh God, stop it! Ew! Oh,
That's great.
It's just a couple of single giant tears that are the size of his eyes.
They're like the Ghibli tears.
Yeah,
You know, they're just like ridiculously huge.
and it's so strangely. So strangely stoic at the same time. So it's they are big tears, but it's not like this big, ugly One Piece cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could guess the contrast between those things could be creepy.
But are there any other characters we want to talk about, or do we want to move into kind of just wrapping up with our feelings on the fandom of World Trigger? Or speculating where the series will go, and then afterwards, Q&As.
Well, I could think of one more character. Annalise's baby boy.
My baby boy! My perfect brother.
We were going to talk about why Osamu Mikumo is the best. I think Chika is the best character in World Trigger, but to be fair, Osamu plays into the character type I really like, so I'm really fond of him too. He's the underdog who frequently plays a straight man to other characters, and while I like him a lot, it's clear to me that Osamu is the real main character of the series. He's the crux of most of the emotional arcs in World Trigger. It's his decisions that push the story forward the most. It's his relationships that most of the cast is built around, and it's his eyes through which we discover Border.
Yes. Yeah, Ashihara-sensei has said there are 4 main characters. It's Osamu, Yuma, Chika, and Jin. But yeah, for all the reasons that you stated, Osamu's the main character.
The first chapter is named after him.
Yes.
That's true.
The first volume has the cover with Yuma, but Yuma is the poster boy. Osamu is the main character.
Yes, he's very much the poster boy. There's a handful of Osamu moments I want to call into attention that... I love this boy. Anybody who's talked to me for 5 minutes knows I love this boy. He's my favorite character ever. And he's weak. And it makes him interesting. He wants to get strong, but as we've discussed earlier, if he can't get strong, he wants to be able to help others be strong. So he's perfectly fine with being a support for other characters. And I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that we've got a character that's not the strongest, not trying to be the strongest, but he's using his head as his primary weapon. He's using his tactics. But there are a couple moments, like in Volume 1, the school is invaded by, I think, 2 Marmods, and Osamu tries to fight them off so everybody can evacuate. And he's very weak. He can't do it. So he bails out, and Yuma takes his trigger, so Yuma won't be detected using his own trigger. And Osamu's like, no, you can't use that, you can't use that, you can't use that. And the first time I read it, you first see that, you're like, don't be a dick. Let him use your trigger. But he goes on and, Yuma's doing all these crazy things, and he says, you can't use that because it's only for training. It's not strong enough for you.
Yeah.
And I think that moment I was like, this character is very interesting. He's not, don't use that because it's mine. Don't use that because you're not a border member. That's a weak weapon. Don't, get yourself in danger by using, a wooden sword. And so I think that was really cool. Another moment when, he really, really endeared myself. We talked about this earlier, but when he was fighting with Kazuma, and he's getting beat and he's getting beat and he's getting beat. And then he finds out that Jin has basically given away Fujin for their team, for their squad to be able to be formed. And he just asks, can I please ask for one more round? And it's just, it's that moment that shows his conviction and like, okay, if other people are sacrificing, I gotta do more.
And he actually manages to pull a draw with his ray gust plus super slow asteroid tactics, which is great. It sets up his most interesting character trait, thinking outside the box, with his limited resources in order to make up for his weakness.
Yeah.
He actually reminds me of myself when I made a football team with a bunch of friends when we were kids. I've always been awful at sports. I was incredibly weak. I couldn't even learn to kick the ball properly. But I really wanted to make myself useful to the team. So what did I do? I tried to position myself in a way so that I would annoy the enemy players the most.
That's excellent.
Yeah, even
That's
if I couldn't
pretty
take away the ball myself. Which is more or less what Osamu does in his fights against Suwa and Nasu.
Yeah, he positioned himself where he would, like, put pressure on Nasu to, limit her movements, even though, like, he, himself could not really do anything. He knew how to position himself to create psychological pressure for his enemies. And I like how Osamu is able to use tactics like that and willing to think outside the box to go, okay, I can't, beat an enemy head on. I can't do a whole lot by myself. But what can I do to help my teammates score these points or help, my team turn the tide of this battle? And I really appreciate that mindset he has. I really appreciate Osamu as a protagonist because, like as we mentioned before, his goal is not to be the best. His goal is to help his team and the people around him the best he can, and he's always concerned about the safety and the well-being of others, often, at the detriment of himself sometimes, or like willing to take the cost in order to help his teammates. But he's also always thinking about ways to improve himself so that he can not just for his own benefit, but for the benefit of the group, for the benefit of everyone. And I really like that selflessness of his. And I also just like that ability that he's able to think about, what's not best for me, but also always what's best for the team.
What I also love about him is that he also keeps getting credit at first for what his allies do, but essentially either he does that or those things go to waste, so he has no choice but to accept. But he still feels guilty about it, which makes for an interesting emotional conflict.
I like when he's towards the beginning of the series, he's helping out. I forget the name of the neighbor, but a big bomber type neighbor comes, and Kitora does most of the work. Yes. And Kitora does most of the work, taking it out, and, Osamu's just helping people evacuate, and they're like, oh, thanks, you saved us. And Kitora's like, and he's like, no, look, she did it, wow, she's so great. And she's just like, I want to be so angry at him, and he's such a loser, but...
Yeah, Osamu is just so selfless. Like his goal really is just to help the people around him, and he's not even comfortable taking credit for anything. It's like he just wants to help.
Though he does acknowledge that he has selfish reasons, even if he's probably too hard on himself in that regard. So while he wants to help people, he does it so that he doesn't hate himself for not doing so and running away. So that's also an interesting part of his character.
Everything is well accumulated in his, I think it's volume 10 speech, his whole, like, I'm not a hero. But, basically, I'd hate myself if I just turned my back. So I've got to do what I've got to do. I've got to do what I can. And that's why he's such a good boy.
He is a sucker for those in need.
And I just love that he earns the respect of all the people around him just because he just has this, he's so hardworking and he's so selfless and he's always working to do the best for the people around him. Because, like, we have that scene where his mom is telling him all the people who visited him in the hospital, and then she's like, it's interesting. All these people visited you in the hospital. Some people were like saying, oh, I'm sorry you got hurt and stuff, but no one said you should quit border. No one ever said anything like that. So, and that's just such a powerful moment because Osamu thinks of himself as weak and he doesn't, really appreciate, like, just how much his efforts really do matter and just how much he really is of help. But the people around him do recognize that. So it's just such a powerful moment that, yes, Osamu has a place in Border. He has a very important role. He might never be, like, an ace attacker or anything, but the role he plays in Border is incredibly valuable, and the people there are very glad to have him around.
I love his long road to self-improvement, how long it takes, and just how he has to get all the help from his A-rank friends and Kitora. The spider tactics are just amazing and make the battle against Kakizaki and Kitori probably my favorite rank battle so far. Osamu is great, guys.
Yes.
He's so good. Please love him.
Join the fan club. Be number 100. Be the number 100.
Be number 100.
I mean, I think he's definitely he's probably a very underrated character as far as, like, just shonen protagonists go.
Well, at least among World Trigger fans, he's well appreciated because he's been number 1 in both character polls.
Which that really surprises me, honestly. Not that I don't think he deserves it, but I totally would have expected Yuma to be number 1 and Osamu number 2, so that kind of caught me off guard, honestly.
So with fan goods, one of my friends the other day-ish, I guess, was explaining, like, what is your boy? Is he a 100 yen boy? Is he a 1,000 yen boy? In relation to how much do their goods sell for at the resale shop? And I was like, that's a very interesting way. And it's an interesting way to see how popular a character is. And Osamu's about a 300, 400 yen boy. Whereas Kazuma and Izumi and Tachikawa are more the 1,000 yen boys. So I always expect to see them higher than they rank. So it's very interesting to me to see Osamu, my 400 yen boy, get number 1 twice, where he deserves to be forever.
I will say this, Osamu kind of just makes me want more just normal Jump protagonists, ones that aren't just, like, super powerful and just win all the time. And I think that's why, even though he has a superpower, I rally behind Midoriya until death, because I think he's not only is he just such a great character, but he has powers, and I ranted on Twitter about this the other day, but he has powers, but, like, he still has a long way to go before he's also shown a lot of improvement in his series, but I still think he has a long way to go before he becomes, like, the number 1 hero or whatever. Because we know he's going to be the number 1, he's going to be the best. Like, he said so in the first chapter, so we know it's coming, but, like, the journey he takes to become number 1 is really interesting. You want to see him grow, just like with Osamu. I hope that kind of becomes a trend where we just see more characters like that.
But, yeah, Osamu is the best. And this is our thesis as to why.
Now, I'm actually really interested in hearing about the World Trigger fandom because, as somebody who is a lot more casual out of the 4 of us here, I haven't really interacted with a lot of the World Trigger fandom. Like, I know people who really, really love it, but I mean, I hate to admit that I've never seen an episode of, like, the World Trigger abridged series, and I feel like I really should check it out. And, I'm aware of the Osamu fan club and all that kind of stuff, but I honestly didn't realize World Trigger had such a passionate fan base.
It's pretty impressive.
Are you part of the Discord server, Border headquarters that's Annaliese made?
Okay.
That I'm never on.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry. Administration has left the
daily
building.
pictures of Osamu on there.
I am very bad at keeping on top of things on every Discord channel I'm on.
Yeah, the same here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Border Headquarters. I love you so much. I'm not worthy.
Aww.
But the fandom for this series has been amazing. There's a rule I've heard called the 1% rule, where 1% of your fandom's just going to be the worst it'll be super toxic. And of course, the bigger your fandom is, like, the more toxic people will be, in it.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody toxic at all in World Trigger. And we're not a huge fandom. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we're not huge, but everybody that I've talked to has so much love for this series. I mean, look at all the fan works that are still coming out. The series has been on hiatus for like 18 months. There's still, there's a 60-minute World Trigger drawing challenge on Twitter. I don't know how often they do it. I think it's maybe, I'm just throwing this out there, I think it's at least twice a week. And they'll give you a topic,
cool.
and you have 60 minutes to draw it. And it's really cool to see, people still celebrate characters' birthdays. Osamu is on Friday the May 25th.
This is when we're planning to have this episode out, I think. So.
Yeah, happy birthday, Osamu!
That's gonna be
Hey, we totally planned that all along.
But then there's we've got our club, the unofficial Osamu fan club. There's, I don't know if they're still active, but for a little while at least, there's a Tokieda fan club in Japan.
Wow.
There are still doujinshi events in Japan. I think there's one coming up that's a Osamu-based one. And then there's even a restaurant, a curry restaurant in Akihabara, where the owner or manager or something loves World Trigger. So you go in and there's World Trigger stuff all over the walls. They make eggplant curry.
Oh,
And their picture for it is the mascot of the restaurant, but it has goggles. So it's a clear reference to the Omaha Squad.
Oh man, I gotta visit there.
That's dedication.
It's so good. That guy is actually a member of the Osamu fan club. Join today. You can be like, I think it's Aliba Curry in Akihabara. But wow. Yeah, if you do go to Japan, I totally recommend going there. It's awesome. Even Ashihara Sensei has done a drawing of Ikoma for the restaurant.
Wow.
But I mean,
nice.
It's just the love. It's just so strong still, and I don't know. I mean, I could say it's because the series, it's so good and it's memorable, and there's just so many good characters that's why people will stand by it for, a long time. But I really don't know. I'm happy that it's still got a big fandom. Well, it's still got a sizable fandom.
A passionate
fandom.
A passionate, yes, that's appropriate. A passionate fandom. I love you guys.
I wish I could participate in the fandom more honestly, because I've been so busy that I've been quite out of the loop for a while now. I've only just doing the abridged series and participating and sometimes just looking over the discussion on ODA, which rest in peace. But yeah, I'm happy that World Trigger is still has an active fandom, and I might actually want to participate in that challenge you mentioned sometime. Maybe.
Yeah,
Same here.
It's fun. Thanks, fandom. Stay strong. Someday, hopefully, maybe, World Trigger will come back. I do want to say, last December, I was at Jump Festa, and Yuma was on all the boards that had all the main characters. So, don't lose hope. Shueisha hasn't lost hope.
Well, that's good to hear at least.
That makes me very happy to hear.
And in case you were interested in Well Triggered, in the abridged series, recently we managed to win against a mighty opponent the copyright claims. So so they both episodes are viewable to the public right now, and yeah.
Awesome.
That's good.
I hope we can make the third episode as soon as possible.
We should remember to put links to those in the show notes for the episode.
Definitely.
World Triggered started as very much a group initiative. The previous leader of the project, MAS 8705, I think that was his name, organized basically everyone on the forum around the hashtag Tiba contests from Team 4-Star, and everyone kind of joined in into the brainstorming. It was around the time that we had the Katori Squad match. So it was around the chapter that she said, "What do you think? You are some kind of main characters?" and that's kind of where the joke and the kind of what I try to spin into the theme of everyone's getting so meta is because the media around us shape our motivations. So then a kind of a discussion was spun into who is the main character of World Trigger actually? And some said, maybe it's Yuma, and some said maybe it's Osamu, and that's kind of where the joke came from. Then it was a really very much appropriately to World Trigger, very much a community project. Now it's kind of in the hands of me and Grail and Caster recently, so yeah.
Awesome. So we got the origins of the World Triggered abridged series here too. We got 2 origin stories in 1 episode.
Go check it out.
That's a lot of origin stories.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of shameless plugs.
But I've always been impressed by how passionate the World Trigger fandom is, but I've never been surprised because World Trigger is such a unique series in Shonen Jump in terms of how it presents itself as a battle series, in terms of what kind of protagonist Osamu is, in that, unlike other Shonen Jump protagonists, he's not aiming to be the best himself, he's just aiming to help the most people around him and bettering himself to do that, and how unique that is. And so I think there are just all these great qualities, these great unique qualities to World Trigger that invite such a passionate fandom for it. And there's also so much intriguing lore elements to the series, so much intriguing world building that sparks people's imagination to want to see where the story is going and think about the story and get invested in it on a deeper level as well. So I think World Trigger is just a really unique series, and I really enjoy it. I myself also want to participate in the fandom more, and I'm incredibly happy that it's continued to be strong, even in the 1.5 hiatus World Trigger has taken. And I'm hoping, just like how Shueisha seems to have faith that World Trigger will return, I hope for that as well.